Hmm. Okay, how about now? Does that sound better? It works. In big sarcastic capital letters. Good, you can hear me now. Excellent. Good, good. No, as I was saying, hey everybody. Hope you guys are good. Oh. Evening, Andrew. How's it going? Hope you guys are doing good. But yeah, man, so just chilling. Just chilling right now. More than anything else. Oh, hang on. Just a second, folks. I've got a phone call here. Yo. I'd look into it, mate. Alright, cheers, man. Even during a stream, I get a phone call from work. I've got 4 days off, and people still can't help themselves. Oh dear, oh dear. It's like we finally get started now. Oh dear. I've got 11 of you in here, and I'm taking phone calls from work already. It's not ideal. Of coincidence. You'll quickly find out that when you work in a bookies, like, there is no escape. There is like no escape whatsoever. You are stuck with that shit. Just moving my stuff around here on my 2 screens so I can better see what's going on. But yeah, as I said, hope you guys are doing good. Chair stream hype. Oh Jesus. As you can tell, as usual, we are off to a great start. Seeing who's in here. Jason, Daniel, good to see you. Hi, Andrew. Kelly, great question. Do you have the pizza yet? No. The reason being is because there is a tub of Häagen-Dazs in the fridge with my name on it. So, I tend to only buy pizza when my brother has also got a day off from work. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to ask him tonight what day off does he have, if he has one between now and Friday when I'm back at work, and then I'll probably ask him and then we'll do it together. But it's a work in progress. Hi, Katie. Good to see you, darling. Hope you're doing all right. Do you have the drink? Yes, I do have the drink. I have 2 cold cans of Pepsi Max ready to go. My mum bought a 24 multi-pack a couple of days ago, and I've been going through them. That's nice. Got another one. I think you can't see it so well from here, but that's a mini fridge. So I don't buy as many soft drinks as I would like, but it's, again, work in progress. I'm pretty tired. How are you? Same, to be honest, Andrew. Same. A lot of work, a lot of time on the day job, but you know, it's good to get a bit of time off. Got 4 days of annual leave, so I'm gonna use them, and I'm gonna try and make the most out of it and get some content out there. I've still got a Jack Miller video. I've still got to go off and video edit, but it's going all right. I can't really complain. It's just nice. Well, at least you'd think you'd have the hope of trying to do shit and not be too busy, but of course, as you saw about 10 minutes ago, shit gets in the way. Yeah. Oh, hi, Lewis. Good to see you, man. I'll be checking in before I head out. Hope you're doing good. I'm good, Lewis. Don't worry, man. Good to see you. Even if it's only for very briefly, because, you know, my man's living the Barcelona nightlife, which is pretty sick, if I do say so myself. Me, I've got boring and sticky West London. It's not quite the same, but you make the most of it. So damn, I've only been going 8 minutes, and there's 19 of you in here. Damn, that's pretty neat. I love that. Reduction. I did laugh at Fabio's Twitter post of him on the bike shirtless. Well, look, I shouldn't laugh, but I did. Like, a part of me, like, feels a bit guilty about it because, you know, it was potentially very serious, but, you know, no harm done in the end. Fabio kind of got lucky, in that sense, that the stewards, at least in my opinion, were extremely lenient on what they could have done, on what they should have done. But I will always appreciate funny content, especially when it comes from MotoGP, because there isn't I'll tell you this for free. With Formula 1, there's like 20 of us out here that tries to make funny content, goes down the whole meme road, tries to play, you know, the more independent social media game and content creators when it comes to Formula 1. Like, there's plenty of people within that space for that. With MotoGP, that just doesn't exist. You know, it's just dudes let's playing the games for the most part. There isn't many people out there making opinion videos on it. Shout out to you, Josie. But I did find that funny. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm glad that at least he saw the funny side of it. And, you know, like you said, in the end, no harm done. But, yeah, you know, we need all the help we can get. It's a shame. I genuinely feel really bad for Miguel Oliveira, because my man rode a brilliant race, rode beautifully, managed that race to perfection. It's the heaviest tyre wear track we go to in MotoGP. You need to make the right tyre call and manage your tyres well. Miggy did it perfectly, and it's like no one cared because all the talk was towards Fabio throwing out his chest protector. Felt bad for him in that regard, because that was a stunning win. He said himself it was the best of his career, and it was like a distraction. It wasn't even like the most prolific story to come out of the day. That's why I kind of felt bad for him. Yeah, you know, we'll talk about it more on the podcast. I've actually got most of the script for this week's episode done already. So we'll talk about that this week. If you're a Patreon backer for the show, you'll see more of that later on in the week. But yeah, he admitted today, Andrew, that he admitted today he should have been black flagged. He was like, yeah, like, look, Fabio's a bit strange in the sense of I think he's had people whisper in his ear to be a bit more chirpy on Instagram, because he was quite, F the haters on Instagram about it yesterday, but I think now he's had a day to reflect and do a test and think about what he's had to say a little bit more. I think he's realised that, yeah, what he did wasn't okay, and I'm glad that he's acknowledged that it wasn't okay. But you and I both, everyone in this chat knows that a rider is never going to friggin' stop under those circumstances off their own volition, which is why we need stewards to take that decision out of their hands, in my opinion anyway. So, he did admit today that he should have probably parked it, or at least have been black flagged, but hey, as I said, we'll talk about it a bit more on the podcast later this week. Hopefully we'll get it out before the end of the weekend. It's actually quite a quiet week this week when it comes to motorsport. I don't think there's a Formula 1 race. That's next week at Paul Regard. There's 2 weeks till the Sachsenring, so there's no MotoGP either. So it will just be IndyCar. IndyCar's duel in Detroit this weekend, I think, will be the most prolific series we cover. I don't think anything from the Nürburgring 24 will make it on that week. So, no, Daniel, final stands are already out. Like the stewards reviewed the case yesterday. They gave him another 3-second penalty yesterday for not riding with a chest protector, to go alongside the 3 seconds he already got for cutting the turn 1 chicane. So it was 6 seconds of time penalties, dropped Fabio down to 6th. But oh yeah, French Grand Prix next week at Paul Ricard. Captivating, tremendous race. Yeah, definitely agree, Katie. You never get done as much as you want to get done during time off, ever. Never, ever, ever. There's always shit that you leave hanging, and then you just got to kind of suck it up. Shortest lap count at Nürburgring 24 ever. Yeah, they probably shouldn't be holding that race in June, but Shaddy, big up Dre, been watching since F1 2011. Holy shit. I'm so sorry. Oh, man. God, that's a throwback. F1 2011, when I was driving for Force India. In arguably the worst of the Cody's F1 games. Well, certainly one of the ones on the lower tier, anyway. Good times, good times. You there? Good to see you, man. Hope you're doing alright. If you've been sticking around watching me for that long, then I can only apologise. Oh man, it's been all over the place. Gibran asking, the only thing I'm looking forward to about the French Grand Prix is how Seb does given his run of form. Look, everybody needs to pump their brakes on the Seb hype train just a little bit. I really, really enjoyed it, but like, that Aston Martin is not a great car. It's looked a bit better in the last couple of rounds, but the midfield is so competitive that like a bad day will put you like 13th. A good day might get you in the top 6. That's how wild it is now. Like, Alpine's had good weekends. McLaren's gotten on the podium. Ferrari's gotten on the podium. AlphaTauri's got... Almost every midfielder has gotten on the podium already this season. That's how... Like, I can't believe I'm saying this. This has been a really good F1 season so far. Like, this season has been excellent. I'm not sure how much more you could ask for from as an entertainment standpoint. We've had unpredictable races, great finishes. We've had the fair degree of the chaos that we often like about F1 every once in a while. Like, even Monaco didn't completely suck. Or like which is already a miracle in itself. you know, and we've had unpredictable results up and down the field. Like, who would have thought that, like, everyone in the top 6 of the Constructors' Championship has already had a podium finish, given that it's still Mercedes and Red Bull at the top of the pile? You know, that is a miracle in itself, and we should be very, very happy with that. Let's have a look here in the chat real quick. I don't want to ramble too much. Dom, can we catching up on the YouTube today? Nice to see you on the Tomo. Thanks, man. Honestly, came completely out of nowhere. Like, Tomo, you may know him on Twitter as Tom McCluskey, one of the biggest F1 YouTubers out there, was asking people for their opinions on, you know, on certain topics, and he just reached out to me and DM'd me one evening and said, Dre, I know it's short notice, but if you want to record like a 45-second segment on Red Bull's Driver Academy, and I'll put it in a video. And I was like, alright, great. You know, honestly, relatively speaking, M101 is nowhere near the size of the Tomos, the WTF1s, the Arabs, the Josh Revels of the world. So, for him to notice me and my content and recognize me as an opinion that he, you know, he respects and something that he wants to have on his channel was awesome. I'm honoured. So I will always do what I can to help other people out, and, you know, if people want to have me on, you know, that's awesome. I'm not going to complain at all. If you haven't seen it, go check out on Tomo's channel the video on the Red Bull Driver Academy. I think I'm around the 13-minute mark if you want to specifically see my thoughts on the whole thing. But there's a lot of quality content creators out there. Me, Aidan Millward, Kiera Megan is in it as well, I believe, which was kind of awkward because we were both tagged in the tweet, but she soft-blocked me ages ago. So I thought, oh, okay. She said she's clearly unblocked me and moved on then, clearly. So, you know, I'm not down with the influencers like that, or I'm not down with the new breed. I'm a bit old for that now, but I did think that was funny. F1 2014 and 2015 were worse. Yeah, maybe. That's probably fair, actually. At least 2011 was fun. 2014 was just 2013, but way worse, and 2015 was more a tech demo than a video game. But at least driving the cars in 2015 was nice. Like, I enjoyed how the upgraded handling and playing at 60 FPS felt. So, you know, as a game, didn't really work 2015. As a proof of concept, I can't say I didn't enjoy it, because I did. But, big up Force India, loved every minute. Thanks, man. Aston will go back to sucking at France. Yeah, probably. It's a Merck's track to the bone. It wouldn't surprise me if Merck's bounce back and wins on that one. I know, I'm just happy to see him. Look, Gibran, I am in the same camp as you. I was fucking delighted that he came second in that race. Look, as a Sebastian Vettel fan, like, that is like a year and a half's of frustration that just kind of melted away at the whole thing. Because we all know the last 2 years at Ferrari were not great, to say the least. 2020 in particular was an awful season, the worst of Seb's career by a mile. So to... You know, and again, his start at Aston Martin wasn't particularly great either. Lance Stroll was definitely better in the first 3 or 4 rounds. But obviously, as time has gone on, I think Seb's starting to come into his own in that car. And look, my man was running leader-level pace when he was in 4th place, even before that restart. I was like, okay, this car's got something around here. I don't know if that will hold out long term, but it, you know, I don't know if it's just a street circuit vibe, but there's a lot of positives to take away from all of that, so we'll take it. Got 26 of you in here. Wow, cool. Oh, we need a wet race. We had one, Kelly. We had one at Imola. It was changeable conditions, which is arguably even better, you know? And Imola wasn't, like for an Imola race, it actually wasn't bad. Like, Imola's one of the worst tracks on the calendar for racing in these cars, and Imola was decent. So, you know, I can't complain. Like I said, this season's been great. It's been awesome. Like, I don't think you could have asked for much more. We've got a 2-team title fight at the front. We've got an unpredictable midfield, and the action hasn't largely stunk. I don't think you can ask for much more as a modern fan. Like, this sport is designed to be boring inherently, so if it's not boring, it's automatically a win as far as I'm concerned. So yeah. I'd say Baku was also a Mercs track, to be fair. True, but there was kind of a hint that they wouldn't do well here because of Monaco. The Mercs this year really struggles to get heat into the tyres. So much so that I think they were saying in Friday practice that it was taking them 3.5 laps to get full heat into them. So, like, the hint was kind of there that... you know, the Mercs are probably not going to be that great around Baku. And it showed. And I'd say I'd say the first 100 metres of the restart was about the only time the entire weekend where Hamilton looked like he was going to win that race. Besides that, zero. Like, the double jump happened, they were not great in practice, they got a bit jammy in qualifying given the red flags, and then Hamilton had a golden chance to win it on the 2-lap restart because you don't talk about it, but Perez's restart from that standing start with 2 to go was awful. Hamilton would have certainly beaten him to turn 1 if it wasn't for the fact that he flicked the magic button on his dashboard and went off into the escape road. Hamilton blew a win. He absolutely blew the win on this one. I was nice when I wrote about it on Substack and I said 3 podium. What I probably should have said was he blew the win. That was a gimme for Lewis. And that would have been a completely undeserving victory, given the state of the weekend, and it would have been 25 free points on Verstappen. Priceless. Priceless, because whether we like to admit it or not, Verstappen has probably been better than Hamilton this season. He certainly hasn't made as many costly errors. Like, the ones where Hamilton's made a mistake have been much bigger than some of the minor errors that Verstappen has made this season. Like, this is the most fuming Hamilton has looked in probably half a decade. So, for Hamilton to have a shot at that dub and then cough it up like that was catastrophic. It's one of those ones where if Verstappen goes on to win the title, we're going to circle Baku as a key flashpoint in that title race, because instead of a 25-point swing for Verstappen, and, you know, with Verstappen first and Hamilton probably third, that would have been plus 10, maybe plus 11 on Hamilton. Instead, it could have been plus 25 Hamilton, and then instead it's now 0. So you can see how crazy the variances on Baku would have been. That brake job could have been a 36-point swing. Massive, massive number. Like, Max got a free pass for what, you know, a freak tyre failure. It cost him 0. He's a very, very lucky boy. I guess that's Verstappen getting the rub of the green after what happened in Imola, because Hamilton was very lucky to escape that one with a red flag and a change of tyres, and having obviously a very fast racing car that was able to have him climb back up to second. You know, don't tell people on Twitter I said this, but I think Verstappen's been better than Lewis this year, and it's starting to show. Yeah, hydraulic problem with Perez's car. They were close to benching the car. They said themselves they were pretty close to retiring that car. He had to nurse it the whole second half of that race, and just about got away with it. Let's have a look at some. I'm catching up a little bit here. Dom saying Tomo and Josh Ravel are probably the best guys in the F1 YouTube game at the moment, like Tom Martinez too. Tom's an old mucker of mine, Martinez. I'm delighted he's doing so well. You know, one of the real good guys in this space. He's a lovely bloke. Delighted that Martinez is doing well. I don't actually watch an awful lot of F1 YouTubers. If you wanted to see some of the guys I do watch, watch episode 300, because we gave some shout-outs out to a lot of people that we like in this space that aren't necessarily some of the mainstream F1 YouTubers. That's why none of us said Chainbear. Not that we don't love him, because I love Stu and I love his work. It's just, he doesn't really need the rub. He's got 350,000 subs. You know, I thought it would be a bit more generous if we spread it out a little bit more. You know, if you want to see who I subscribe to overall, I might show off on my TV screen better. Yes, Martin, that is Tom97 HD. Definitely. Vettel was very, very good yesterday. Driver of the race. Yeah, hard to argue with that. I said on Substack, it's between him and Gasly. Certainly. Gasly was also phenomenal yesterday. In fact, Gasly was great all weekend. That AlphaTauri is not a particularly great car, and yet Gasly had top 5 level pace pretty much all weekend long. That was like, he finished third, and it didn't really feel like a fluke that he finished in third, which is about as big an endorsement of Gasly as I can give him. We all know that midfielders will punch above their weight every once in a while. We all know that the Aston Martin is not built to finish in second, but F1 is good for like 3 freakish races a season where you will punch above your weight, and Gasly's lottery number came up again for the 3rd time in 3 years. You know, that's how you stand out as a midfield driver, and yeah, Gasly was superb all weekend. Just checking. Yeah, 4-4 tie. I don't know how the season will play out with Perez, Daniel. Like, honestly, it's still too early to say. Like, I know we're 6 races in, but like, it's funny because Perez said at the start of the year, I need 5 races to get used to this car, and then on race 6 he goes and wins. But the thing with Perez is that 1, his car wasn't optimal. 2, his pace was nowhere near as good as Verstappen's on the day. And I don't know how much the hydraulic issue played into that, but it wasn't an amazing performance from Perez. It was just, a lot of it was just him being in the right place at the right time, and that's the nature of being a great rear gunner, is that if you can be there to clean up the other person's mess when they do have a bad day, you will be just fine. Here, Valtteri, I'm looking at you, etc. But, you know, I think Vettel and Gasly were more worthy of being driver of the day than Checo was. Like, I don't think we will realise until years down the road just how much had to fall into place for Perez to win that race. Like, it's even more freakish than arguably Gasly's last year at Monza. I just don't think we've had that sort of thought about it in that way, because a Red Bull winning is not as big a surprise as an AlphaTauri winning. And Checo, now he's won a race and now he's in a top tier seat, we look at Checo like a top 5 level driver, which he probably is, to be fair. God, first time since USA 2012 both Mercs finished outside of the points. Wowee. Every race is... Yeah, Max is finished... Yeah, until today, every race Max had finished first or second. Yeah, like, you know, it's... Yeah, Max is... Like, the biggest errors Max made was putting 2 wheels off at Bahrain and track limits in Portimao. That really is about it. He's not really given Hamilton much room to breathe all season long, and now Mercs have had a couple of rounds that they were not going to be strong at, i.e. Monaco and Baku. Now it's back in Red Bull's favour, and now Red Bull's actually got some breathing room especially in the constructors. Drivers not so much, but in the constructors, they've got what, 26-point lead now, I think it is. You know, they've got that. Virtually, that's a race in hand, given realistically where cars are going to finish. They've got at least a round in hand now on Mercs. So we'll have to wait and see what happens at Paul Ricard. But we're not at must-win territory for Mercedes yet, but they're on the back foot. They've had back-to-back pretty miserable races, so, you know, it's crazy. Oh, you guys want to talk about Bottas, huh? Bottas has just completely checked out, says Katie. A third of VB Sundays have been absolute stinkers. Not good. I mean, I mentioned it in my Substack piece. I genuinely have a level of empathy for Valtteri Bottas because the court of public opinion has made its mind up on him. And as we've proven with Grosjean and Maldonado and Alex Albon and other guys in the past, once the internet has made its mind up about you, it's very, very hard to shake that reputation. I don't think Bottas is checked out. I just think he didn't have pace. And I don't think Bottas' season has been as bad as people like to make out that it's been. I just think he's in an impossible situation. He's in a very good car. And unfortunately, Sakir last year kind of showed that, hey, maybe George Russell is better, but how much do you want to base that off of one race's body of work? And I don't know how useful that is in the grand scheme of things. Like, Bottas, Russell's had one outstanding race in his career and a bunch of question marks because he's been racing backmarkers his entire career. We have no idea how good George Russell is relative to the field. And I'm sorry, beating Nicholas Latifi and Robert Kubica and racing the Hasses is not a benchmark we can really evaluate. And that's the problem. So we have itchy feet over Valtteri's seat in the first place. Because, look, we're motorsport fans. We want Hamilton to be challenged. Even the most hardcore of Hamilton fan would probably admit that for entertainment's sake, things are a bit more exciting when Rosberg was up there. And that's the biggest crime that Valtteri's ever committed, is that he's not Nico Rosberg. A guy who is a Hall of Fame, all-time great driver, 20-plus wins, world title, 30-plus pole positions. He cakewalks into a Hall of Fame tomorrow, right? Valtteri's not that guy. And Valtteri is a bit more of a regression to the mean for a guy of his talent who has to compete against Lewis Hamilton in the other chair. And now his role matters so much more because Red Bull is now a threat. Red Bull is now a genuine threat. Verstappen has been excellent all season, probably the driver of the year so far. Sergio Perez was rough to start the year. Let's not forget, for all the shit we gave Valtteri Bottas at Imola, Sergio Perez was worse. Perez overtook people under a safety car and then spun under his own volition. At least with Bottas you could make the argument that he was taken out by Russell. But no one talked about Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. They talked about Valtteri because Valtteri's had more experience in the Mercs and Perez probably had the mitigating factor of him being new to Red Bull. And yeah, it's not a nice combination. And I said in the Substack before that the pass score for Valtteri Bottas is now second place. He has to start finishing second and finishing in front of Verstappen more frequently. The problem is, Verstappen is driving as well as he ever has, and he's driving as the best driver on the planet. And he's not going to beat Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton's just a better driver than him, and there's no ifs or buts about it. It's going to take mitigating circumstances for Bottas to end up in front. Portimao was the only real race this season where, at least for a while, Bottas was able to dictate the pace. And until Monaco, overall, Bottas, at least in my opinion, was holding up his end of the deal. I mentioned it before. After Spain, he was 15 points in front of Checo. That's fine. That's honestly fine. Like, your key matchup is Checo. It's not Hamilton or Verstappen. He was plus 15 on Checo. One dodgy wheel nut later and one awful Baku weekend later, he's now minus 22 to Sergio Perez. And he looks worse for that very reason when the first 4 rounds was third, DNF third. Third is fine. Third is fine because it means unless Hamilton doesn't win, even if Hamilton finishes second, you are still going to outscore them for the Constructors' Championship unless Perez finishes fourth. Which Perez did not do until Monaco. Not really, anyway. And then even in Portimao, for example, Hamilton won. And Bottas was third. That's fine. But of course, fine is not good enough now in that second Mercedes. They want someone more exciting, someone that can challenge Hamilton, someone that's a more reliable second scorer. I even saw people claim that Hamilton's no longer good enough to win a title because he's made 2 mistakes, and I'm just like... It's almost like football Twitter, where it's like we want all these hot takey, short-term solutions to answer more complicated questions, and I saw people saying that Bottas should be sacked immediately. Bring in someone to get used to the car, otherwise you're not going to win the title. And we just assume that whoever walks into that car is going to be an automatic success against Hamilton and Verstappen. There is no one in any of the other 18 seats, in my opinion, that could walk into that Mercs and regularly breach the top 2. No one. Except maybe Charles Leclerc. He might be the only one, and we all know he's not leaving Ferrari because he's incredibly loyal. Like, driving for Ferrari was literally the man's dream. It was his dad's dying wish. He's not leaving Ferrari anytime soon. So yeah, I feel bad for Valtteri, I really do. Because he's stuck in an unwinnable situation where he can't impress people anymore because he's been around too long. We kind of know what he is as a known quantity. And people want him sacked. So whenever he has a good day, people don't care. And when he has a bad day, he gets shit on from a great height. He's in a loveless, thankless job where he will not be praised for his contribution unless it's his team doing it for him on social media. It's a lot like Danny Pedrosa when he was at Repsol Honda in MotoGP for years and years and years. Nobody appreciated his role within the team because Marquez kept spanking him until Pedrosa left and then Honda went to shit. It's the exact same principle. And look, I'm not saying Bottas is the best guy for that seat, but what people don't understand is that talent doesn't just grow on trees. Like, everyone that I could say is definitely better than Bottas is not going to that Mercedes team. Daniel Ricciardo, for example, signed a 3-year deal at McLaren, and he's not been great this season by comparison to Norris. Charles Leclerc is stupidly loyal to Ferrari. Carlos Sainz is the number 2 player in that team. Sebastian Vettel probably isn't on that level anymore. You know, it is. So, with all that in mind, I do have a level of empathy for Val because he is in a shit role. He has to be the clean-up man. Nobody likes the clean-up man unless his name is Rubens. And that's just the shit deal that comes with being a number 2 driver. And hey, it's not even like Bottas is as popular as Sergio Perez, who has a lot of Mexican backing and a lot of support on the internet, on social media. He was the king of the midfielders for the better part of a decade, so people naturally rooted for him. So when he got this Red Bull seat after he was pushed out of the door at the artists formerly known as Racing Point, we felt sorry for him. So naturally we gave Perez a bigger squeeze when he was crummy at the start of the season. So there's a lot of different factors at play, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is Bottas' last season with the team. What I don't think people will realise straight away is that there is no guarantee that plugging in George Russell or Esteban Ocon or whoever else that Mercedes deems worthy of that seat isn't automatically going to make them a better team. At least in my humble opinion, anyway. Albon deserved a chance at redemption at AlphaTauri. I mean, it's hard not to feel sorry for Alex Albon. Alex Albon was put in a Red Bull seat after 12 career races because they didn't think Gasly was good enough. And again, Red Bull seemed to have this stupid idea that they were challenging for the Constructors' title when they weren't. And then they thought, oh, well, Gasly's just shit. Let's put Alex Albon in there. And then they put Albon in there, and they found out that Albon is roughly the same as what Gasly was. You know, turns out the 10-year-plus veteran of the sport might be better than the rookie you rushed through the ranks and put in a top-tier seat to compete against Max Verstappen after half a season. What did they think was going to happen? Oh yeah, Albon will just walk in there, get podiums at will, and, you know, bring Red Bull into play. Horseshit. It's almost like Verstappen... It's almost like they have not realised until now just how good Verstappen actually is. It's like, no. Verstappen is a freak talent. Verstappen did 1 year in single-seaters and then came into F1 and had a race... He won a race halfway through his second season. Not even half, it was like a quarter of the way through his second season. They should have known right there and then that this dude is not like most drivers. He could comfortably drive an F1 car at 15. 15! He was a freak. You know, that's a generational talent. We don't get those very often. If anything, in F1, we're freaking spoilt that we've had so much young talent burst through in the last 3 or 4 years. Like Daniel says in the chat, they want 2 Verstappens. Do you know how crazy that sounds? Verstappen would have had multiple world titles by now and probably had 25-30 wins if it wasn't for the greatest driver of this era being in a race-winning level car. Verstappen is a monster. They've only made one of them. No one has ever hit F1 at that age and been so good straight away. Ever. My man won a Grand Prix at 17. I mean... Hello? And that's just it. Like, Max is so good. And then, like, if you get one of those every 10 years, you go, wow, that's special. Charles Leclerc is like 1% behind him in terms of talent. And then maybe 1% behind him, you've got Lando Norris, who's having a superb season this year at McLaren. The only man in the field now to have scored points in every race. And I think he's third in the championship now. Like, Lando Norris is a beast. Like... Like... We're spoiled. Like, Pierre Gasly, who's won a Grand Prix in a midfielder's car, barely makes the top 5 in terms of talent that has come through in the last half decade. Pierre Gasly, a Grand Prix winner. He's 4th on that list. Because I'd argue he's 4th now because of Perez's win. Thanks, guys. Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris all came up to roughly around the same time. Gasly's like half a step behind those dudes. I think Antonio Giovinazzi is mad underrated, and it's taken him 4 years to find his footing, but he's actually looking like a decent driver now. Not even in the same ballpark as those 3. And I've not even mentioned George Russell, who could be brilliant. The sample size is incredibly small. And you go, the one race he was in a top car, Russell could not have looked better if he tried. We are spoiled. We do not know how good we've got it right now. And that comes with problems. Because Alex Albon would never, in any other F1 environment, for example, be in and out of F1 in 2 years. 2 seasons. Albon, who was a solid young driver, right, didn't really do anything wrong when he was at Toro Rosso. Did the best he could there. You know, walked into an incredibly nasty situation, having to compete against Verstappen and Hamilton and Bottas and guys on that level as a rookie, and then get pushed out of the door at the end of year 2. Like, dude, that's how stacked this grid is. I do not envy anyone in Formula 2 next year. There might not be any seats for them. Like, there's great talent in there. Guan Yu Zhou is a good driver. Robert Schwartzman is a good driver. You know, Dan Tickton is talented. He's a reckless motherfucker with a dirty mouth. But the man can drive. There's no doubt about that. Felipe Drugovich. Like, there is decent dudes in the junior classes right here and now. None of them might make it this year. Because it's that stacked. Like, the one guy that looks a little bit more likely is Theo Pourchaire. Only because of his Sauber affiliations. And because Kimi Räikkönen is 42 later this year. They're saying that Kimi might finally hang it up at the end of the year. But... and Pourchaire has to have won a feature race in his first year in Formula 2 and is still only 17. Besides that, I don't see how any other youngster gets in. Anyone? Because Williams needs Latifi's check. So, unless Russell gets bumped up and then they can find some other scrub to put in there, and if that happens, they'll probably just promote Tickton because he's part of their driver academy already. And Tickton would probably be fine in Formula 1. I don't think he's top tier in F2, but I think he's passable, and I think he'd be fine. You know, so it's crazy. Crazy to think that around half the years I've been watching F1 consciously, the drivers' titles have gone to Schumacher or Hamilton. Same, Katie. I know you got a few years on me age-wise, Katie, but I watched since about 2000, and so, you know, I watched 5 of Schumacher's 7 titles go to him. I've watched 7 titles go to Hamilton, and then 4 to Sebastian Vettel. Those 3 dudes are like the 3 dudes of the 21st century, and no one else even comes close. Hey, there's always Dragon. Dragon will just rotate dudes out every 6 rounds in Formula E. Oscar through Alpine? Well, no. And the problem with that is, I'm not saying you're wrong, but look, realistically, Fernando Alonso is on a 2-year deal and is actually driving. He's getting better in that car round by round. Like, Alonso is doing well. Great 6th place finish. That was Alpine's best result of the year. And Ocon's been superb. Apparently, they're already talking about trying to tie him down. So, apparently, Ocon's on the brink of getting a new contract. So, I don't think there'll be any driver movement at Alpine. Which is incredible because they have Guan Yu Zhou, Christian Lundgaard, and Oscar Piastri in their academy with no chance of an F1 seat until 2023. At best. Good luck, fellas. Good luck. Like, honestly. Because Baku was the Alonso of old. Mediocre car, started bad, made up places, finished in 6th. And he's had a couple of rounds like that now where he's looked solid again. Alonso looks something like his good self again. Ocon was much better at the top of the year. Was unlucky, obviously, with the engine failure this weekend. But overall, just really good. Oi, you calling me old in front of people. Sorry, Katie. That was an accident. I didn't mean to do that. Oh, dear. Let's have a look here. So, Kylian, in hindsight, it seems crazy that the top 3 of F2 could get into F1 in 2019, and now there's barely space for one of the youngsters. We've been blessed and didn't know it. Yeah! We've been spoilt. Like, I think Pierre Gasly onwards, we've been completely spoilt. And it's even worse in the sense of Verstappen and Leclerc have been so good that they've now almost forced a lot of people have now reassessed how we evaluate young talent because of Verstappen and Leclerc, and ignored the fact that they've had unprecedented level of opportunity since coming into the sport. Verstappen got to drive a race-winning level car 25 races into his career. Charles Leclerc was in a race-winning level car even sooner than that. 1 season at the artists now known as Alfa Romeo, and he was in a Ferrari. And now everyone's got to be on that scale. I saw people being critical of Lando Norris towards the end of last year, and I'm like, Lando got a top 4 seat from day 1. Even that doesn't happen often in Formula 1. Like, even that is above par for a level of opportunity that a rookie gets in Formula 1. And that's like 3rd on that list of guys who punched above weight. It would be like walking into a boxing ring with a guy that's 30 pounds heavier than you, and then you knock them out. Sup, Floyd? But completely goddamn spoiled. If Alex Albon can be in and out of F1 in 2 years, something has gone very badly wrong. Or that we are in an all-time great bottleneck for young talent. And James YY saying, yeah, is it better for a driver to be stuck in a Haas or stuck in GP2? Look, I can't tell you. You've got to ask drivers, because it's unbenchmarkable to assess Mazepin and Schumacher as drivers, because the Haas is so much worse than every other car on paper. And yet, Haas overtook Williams in the Constructors this weekend because Mick Schumacher finished in 13th. Nothing makes sense anymore! And then, the problem is, in GP2... In Formula 2 now, the Champions Rule is still a thing. So if Guan Yu Zhou wins the title, and he doesn't get a seat in F1, which is likely at this point, he's going to end up in a sports car. He might end up in Super Formula. He might end up in IndyCar. You know, it's... And there's no guarantees about him going to America either. Like, people seem to think that IndyCar is F1's poor relation when it's not at all. But, like, the Champions Rule needs to go if you're not going to have a guaranteed seat at the end of it. Because this is a year where it's like, on the rookie evaluation or the potential F1 graduate scheme, these dudes are like B-grade, B-plus level drivers who in the last 2 or 3 years have had to follow some A-grade dudes. Because we have George Russell, who won in a Formula 2 car on debut. Lando Norris, who was championship runner-up on debut. Alex Albon, who finished 3rd in the championship on debut. Nick de Vries didn't even get a whiff of an F1 seat, and he won a championship. Because he was around too long. Yeah, don't mix the point. Ignoring Hartley, who, let's not forget, World Endurance Champion Brendan Hartley. You know, we've had, since 2018, Pierre Gasly, Charles Leclerc, Antonio Giovinazzi, Alex Albon, George Russell, and Lando Norris. Albon's not even here no more! How does that even happen? God! Just turn the bedroom light on there. Get a bit more light in here because the sun is starting to come down in London. Ugh, but God, we are spoilt. We are so goddamn spoilt. And unfortunately, when that happens, the talent will inevitably eat itself because there's not enough seats to go around. I've talked about it on video last year when Ferrari could have had Schwartzman, Eilert, and Mick Schumacher in Formula 1. There was viable arguments you could have promoted 4 or 5 dudes off the back of Formula 2 last year. There was a case you can make for Schwartzman, there was a case you can make for Eilert, there was a case you can make for Tsunoda, there was a case you can make for Mick. Dare I say it, there was even an argument you could make for Mazepin. Any other year, he would have had better prospects than Haas. But of course, we don't talk about that. It is wild. Like, even Christian Lundgaard was probably good enough to be in F1 off the back of last year. And he's been mid in Formula 2 this year, and that's not mostly on him. A lot of that's on ART being a bit shit by their standards. I rated Lundgaard highly off the back of last year. But he's got no chance, because the way it's going right now, Guan Yu Zhou's front of the queue. Not fair. At all. I'll just retweet this. Yeah, what's it? I think that's why some people were making the argument last year's. Like, it's why people were making the argument last year that they need to make super licenses harder to get. And to a degree, I can understand why. But the bottleneck for Formula 1 already exists. It's called the fact there's only 20 seats. There's 20 seats, and there's like 6 of them that are guaranteed to be locked down at any given year. Guys who are never going to be at risk of losing their jobs. Sebastian Vettel to a degree, obviously Hamilton, obviously Verstappen, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Norris. Like, this is a freakish year because there's going to be 10 free agents at the end of the season, unless obviously deals are tied up between now and December. Miss asking, where does Gasly's career go from here? I know the guys have asked me about Gasly in the comments, and sorry if I've rambled on a bit and I've ignored you a little bit, but Gasly, I mean, again, he's another guy who's a free agent at the end of the season. But the problem is there's no obvious place for him. Like, you look around the grid and you go, Alpine are probably going to lock their 2 guys in place. Because Alonso's on a 2-year deal. Ocon is too good to drop. You want a hometown guy, and Ocon's driven very well this season. Clearly proving a lot of doubters wrong. He's a very, very good driver, Esteban Ocon. He's another guy that should probably be in an even better seat than he is right now, but there's just no fucking room at the top. Aston Martin will keep their 2 in place. Sebastian Vettel, I think, is on a 3-year deal. And Lance Stroll is the most unmovable seat in the sport for obvious reasons. And Stroll has not been bad this season, given the car he's in. He started the season quite well, actually. He's actually slipped a little bit by his standards. And I don't think he'll want to go backwards, like somewhere like Alfa Romeo. And obviously anything below that is not going to be ideal. Ferrari's got their dudes locked in. Like, Sainz is on a 2-year deal. Leclerc's still got 3 years left on his deal. McLaren has Norris on a new contract. I think Norris and Ricciardo all have 3-year deals on their books. There's nowhere for Gasly to go. That's the problem. Like, Gasly... You know what's funny? A lot of people on Twitter, after Gasly finished 3rd, was saying maybe Gasly ends up at Merckx. And a lot of people read into Mercedes congratulating Gasly on the podium finish. And of course it was peak conspiracy bullshit. The social media team have nothing to do with how that team is run and managed. The more I think about it, the more it could make sense. The question is, how much do you trust Gasly after his last run at a top tier team went to shit? Is that someone you want to take a gamble on? Because his body of work is better than Russell's in Formula 1. It would be less of for me, personally, I think Gasly is less of a punt than George Russell would be, right here and now. I know Gibran mentioned maybe clearing the decks, but it seems like Hamilton's going to sign a new deal at the end of the season. Hamilton's talked about how he's got unfinished business. He said he's already said publicly he will be here next year. So Gasly's kind of stuck. Unless Merckx took an enormous punt, I don't see Gasly having any real choice but to stay at AlphaTauri. Maybe he's better off signing a 1-year deal and seeing how the market shakes up next year. I'm not expecting a massively busy, silly season, because a lot of people are going to want to stay where they are, in my opinion. Like, the only thing that could make it interesting is if Mercedes let Bottas go. And I'm still not entirely convinced they even do that. So, you know, I don't, like, again, McLaren would not sign Ricciardo to a 3-year deal if they weren't in it for the long term. So I don't think Ricciardo's going anywhere. It's like I said, it depends what Merckx want to do. If Merckx blew the whole damn team up, then maybe Gasly. But I think he's better off staying at AlphaTauri for another year and seeing how the market plays out. People asking Mike are asking the question about Raikkonen or Rosberg. Probably Rosberg. I think Rosberg just got the results that Raikkonen, I think, probably just lacked the opportunity for. And to be fair, Rosberg's career is half the length of Raikkonen's, which doesn't help either, because Raikkonen's got the longevity argument. It's a hard one to evaluate. I'd have to give that some proper thought, because they both have very similar careers in terms of pure numbers, besides races logged. That's one I'd have to give it some thought about, certainly. Let's have a look here. Him in Gasly in Formula E would be a superb coup for the series. It really would. Like, Gasly is I know he filled in at Nissan before, and he was superb in Formula E. So, sure, why not? Maybe a massive win for that series. Liam, good to see you, my man. Glad you could join us. Outside shot, United with a good friend of Charles at Ferrari. Should they not go for Mick? Look, what I will say on the situation, even as a Sebastian Vettel fan, Dom, for Vettel leaving Ferrari was the best move for all parties. That was obvious. It was pretty clear by the middle of 2019 that Ferrari had lost faith in Sebastian. It was pretty clear they were favouring Charles towards the end of that season as their guy to build around. When they gave Charles Leclerc a 5-year extension, it was pretty obvious, where their money and focus was going. So, it was pretty clear they were going to build around Leclerc. Vettel needed to get out of there because they were never going to favour him. His last season was dreadful by anyone's standards. His last season was awful. The car didn't suit him. They were all in on Leclerc. The management was piss poor. It's a rare scenario where right now everybody won in that scenario. Ferrari got a better number 2 with Carlos Sainz, who's been very good this season. Aston Martin got a very solid team leader who's having a decent season in Aston Martin. It's not been fantastic. He started pretty slow out of the gate, but Vettel's getting better round by round. Just got a superb podium finish. He's a good team leader in Aston Martin. And even Sergio Perez, who was forced out of that team and had a big old buyout to get rid of him, he ended up in a Red Bull. Everybody won. Apart from Albon. He's like the one loser in all of this, and it was very harsh that he missed out. I do watch F2 when I can, Raul. Just checking Twitter for a second, folks. Don't get too crazy. Wild. Yeah, I just saw some tweets from some people I care about that was a bit, ugh, to say the least. I feel like Dre Hangouts will always end up being Nico Rosberg appreciation streams. And it's not a bad thing. Look, I've made videos talking about this subject. I have spoken on that subject for many, many years. That I said it in 2016 when he retired. People don't know. People will not talk about how good Nico Rosberg was because he was always talked about in the shadow of Lewis Hamilton. Like, it's not so much... it's not so much that Hamilton... What's the best way of me wording this? It really was the Hamilton show in F1 up until 2016. It's not so bad now because we've got more fans from different audiences, and they have their own individual likes. And I think Vettel's popularity has grown a lot in the last few years. I think the fan base is a bit more diverse overall, especially from younger viewers, from my experiences of social media personally. But from my experience of being a part-time media guy, talking to people in the know, and just generally how my own content has been received over the years, I think a lot of that as well is also due to Valtteri Bottas not being as good. I think people have only finally realised just how good Nico Rosberg was. Nico Rosberg kept the arguable best driver in history honest for 3 of the 4 years they were teammates. Like, 15 was the only genuine, okay, Hamilton really did outclass Rosberg here season. Like, Rosberg kept Hamilton honest in 2013 and was unlucky to finish behind him because Rosberg had the lion's share of the bad luck. 14, the title campaign went to the final round. And again, the scoreboard made it look worse because Rosberg DNF'd in a double-point race to Hamilton. And then 16, Rosberg went from a 6-win winner to a 9-race winner and won the title. And beat Hamilton straight up to do it. Like, that's been inconceivable in this era until now. And I think a lot... Look, I'll happily say this as a Brit. Britishness dominates the media when we talk about Formula 1 because it's been a Hamilton show. The lowest common denominator when it comes to casual and uneducated fans is Lewis Hamilton. I think it is at this point, he is a legitimate mainstream celebrity at this point. If you ever follow him on Instagram, if you see some of the people that are in his comment boxes after every race, you will see what I mean. Like, Tom Brady, Serena Williams, Jake Gyllenhaal, Naomi Campbell, like... He is on that level now where he's getting mainstream media attention for what he does. I've seen his name mentioned on Wendy Williams in the United States. And it comes to popularity, Hamilton is mainstream. No one else in F1 even comes close. Like, that was when Hamilton was just starting to come into his own. Rosberg was the one that kept him honest. And I think now that no one's really been able to lay a finger on him since then, his popularity has skyrocketed, alongside Sky building their entire coverage around him, and they're a massive broadcaster in this country. And, you know, the Brits don't know how to handle Hamilton. Partly because people loved Lewis Hamilton, then he became a black activist, and then it split the room. Because people, like, you know what it is? I think people love Lewis the driver, but can't stand Lewis Hamilton the human being. And I think that, and him being a Black Lives Matter activist, has split the room on people now. It's crazy. It's wild. Alright, Gibran, if you were like, I think also Sport, or was it Motorsport.com that posted like a link to social media followers on all their platforms, Hamilton blows everybody out of the water. Like, and you know what it is? The Instagram follower count takes him over the top. Because people are much more perceptive to following people on Instagram. But, yeah, people talking about Rosberg in the comments. I can't disagree with any of you guys. Like, yeah. Like, no, Rosberg's 2016. I don't think even Nico has fully spoken about what he had to do in order to win that championship. I still remember the story he talked about. If you have not heard this story, and you do not want to hear this story, because it's on his episode of the Beyond the Grid podcast that the F1 produce, mute your microphone for the next 2 minutes. Okay? This is a spoiler. If you want to listen to this down the road, okay? Just as a warning. It's only fair. But I remember distinctively, Rosberg was so determined to win that championship. I remember he said that he stopped cycling and deliberately lost a kilo of muscle mass. Specifically because it would make him lighter in the car. And I'm going to drop a kilo of muscle mass. And then he qualified on pole in Japan, having weighed a kilo less than he had done before, because he reckoned a kilo was worth 800ths of a second in the car. He qualified on pole that weekend. He'd go on to win that race, and that was the race weekend he said in his retirement letter that he reckoned if he won the title, he would retire at the end of the season. That's what he said to himself in his mind. I'm hanging up the gloves at the end of the year if I go on to win the title. It was when he won the Japanese Grand Prix was that took him over the top. That's how balls deep Nico Rosberg was in trying to win that championship. And the thing is, no one clocked it. No one cared. No one wanted to hear Nico Rosberg's perspective in 2016 because we all thought it was a fluke. I distinctively remember that season where Rosberg won the first 4 rounds of that season. Let's not forget, I know it was a bit garbage time and all that, but after the cap throw at Kota in 2015, where he blew the championship on that gust of wind and gave Hamilton the chance to win the title outright in America, and the cap throw happened, Rosberg won 7 in a row. Not even Hamilton, the greatest form of Hamilton that we've seen since then, had won 7 straight. And I remember it got so bad that by Sochi that season, Mercedes had to write an open letter to their fans saying, please stop being abusive on social media, because Hamilton had fanned the flames that by swapping crew chiefs around, the team was favouring Nico Rosberg. Lewis Hamilton is not the squeaky clean guy we all make him out to be. He's very conniving sometimes in some of the things he says to the media. And I think we've largely given Hamilton a pass for that now. But what he did in 2016 was nasty. He basically indirectly accused his own team of rigging the championship in 2016. Like, Hamilton is not this happy-go-lucky, always smiling, we're the best fans in the world, you know, team was amazing today, it is all sunshine and rainbows. I remember after Malaysia, when his engine blew up, I distinctively remember him saying to the press that there's 8 dudes in the field on Mercedes power units and I'm the only one having problems. I can't remember who said it on the timeline. Daniel. Yeah, I just saw it. I completely agree. If he ever writes a book, I will be the first person to order it. Because I think Rosberg and his perspective on that championship is fascinating. Fascinating. Because his perspective, no one gave a shit about at the time. No one cared. it was all the Hamilton show in 2016. Because at this point, Hamilton had won 3 championships. We were talking about him as an all-time great. Everyone was back on the wagon F1-wise because Hamilton was winning again after half a decade of not being relevant in a title picture. And it was like, it's the Hamilton show. And then Rosberg won. And then he retired. Did Aiden really say that Rosberg's title was a fluke? It's complete bullshit. He won that shit fair and square. Look, if you're a motorsport fan, you've got to acknowledge that luck will play a factor in things. I can make this argument about sport in general. We don't want to acknowledge it, but luck plays a greater hand in sports than we give credit for. We just like to ignore that fact because it doesn't sound as great. You know. It's like, we like the mentality of the best guy won and the best car won, and, we like our stories to be, neatly tied up and wrapped in a bow, and they don't want to acknowledge that luck may have played a hand in it. Yeah, Hamilton's engine blew. Welcome to motorsport. Shit happens. It's why I've always told people it's a mechanical sport first and a driver sport second. But unfortunately, with the way we are as fans, it's built the other way round. We as fans are now so much more balls deep in the drivers and their personalities and characters. More so than we ever are about the engineering side of things. But Cam's here. Yay! Good to see you, Cam. Well, yeah, you said, I remember I read Hamilton's first book, but you're spot on. My story is a lot more about Hamilton coming up the ranks and into F1 and not so much about his rookie season, because I'd have loved to have heard his perspective on what 2007 would have been in his relationship with Fernando, because it all started out squeaky clean and happy-go-lucky until Hungary happened. And it was like, well, shit. What a surprise. Racing drivers who want to win don't like each other very much. Welcome to sports. Trust me, if you have 2 friends going for a world championship, either the championship survives or your friendship will survive. It is never both. Aiden doesn't really like giving Schumacher much credit either. Yeah, whatever. Strange opinion to have. And yeah, 110%. I'm with you, Luke. I would happily buy Nico's book first. And I'm going to say something controversial here. It might get me killed on Twitter. I think Nico Rosberg is a way more interesting personality than Nico. I think Nico is a way more interesting character and personality that I'd want to know more about than Lewis Hamilton. I think Hamilton's a good human being whose heart's in the right place. I find Hamilton to be bland within the bubble of Formula 1. I think Hamilton's way more interesting when he's talking about anything that's not Formula 1 related. I actually think that Hamilton within the confines of F1 is actually kind of boring. I don't think his interviews are particularly captivating. I think he's very wishy-washy with the media. Take care, Jason. Good to see you, man. I think he's quite wishy-washy when it comes to interviews. I think he's a bit bland, a bit generic. I don't think he's a bad guy at all. Hardly. I think he's a great human being, and I think what he's done off the track has been tremendous. And I think he deserves even more praise for that. But I do actually think that from a narrative standpoint and a perspective standpoint, I would find Rosberg's side of the story way more interesting. I think Rosberg is a very intelligent, very endearing sort of personality, very no nonsense, very cut and try. And I think Nico being more reserved, as Vic's spot on. I think with Rosberg being more reserved and restrained with his personality, I would find his more open perspective a lot more interesting. I think Vic's comment is absolutely on the nose. I can 110% agree. Because I think Vic's right in that what you see with Hamilton is what you get. In the context of F1, I think he's boring. Everything outside of F1, I think Hamilton's brilliant. I love the fact he's a musician. I love the fact he's got brilliant fashion sense. I love the fact that he dedicates a lot of his time on social media to social causes and using his platform to raise a lot of awareness for good. If I got the chance to sit down and interview Lewis Hamilton for 20 minutes right here and now, I would not ask him a single question about F1. I would ask him a lot more about literally everything else. Trust me. That would be the dream interview for me. Would be 20 minutes in a room with Lewis, no hold bar, but I couldn't ask him an F1 question. Because I think everything else with Lewis is way more interesting outside of his racing career. That's just my opinion. My god, there's 36 of you in here. Holy shit. Do me a favour, guys, if you can already, like the video and subscribe, especially if you're new here. Drop some likes. Good for the brand. I've got to say a big shout out and thanks as well to Tomo as well, because when I was on Tomo's video, he put my links out and plugged me. Got about 50 subscribers off of that. So Tomo, thank you for the extra plug and the support, my man. Much appreciated. But if you haven't already, leave a like, all that good stuff. Subscribe if you're new here. If you haven't already, be very, very grateful for that. Thank you very much. Hi Lauren, good to see you as well. Not seen you in ages. Hope you're doing alright. How much did you shout yesterday? Massively. I said on Twitter myself, I literally screamed in the back of my bookies, let's fucking go! I don't know if anyone here is MMA fans. If you've ever seen Chuck Liddell's old celebration, where he just goes, ah! And he just goes like this, and he runs everywhere like that. That was me. That was me. I was just like, ah! That was me. But at the top of my lungs. That was such an important podium. I fucking loved it. So yeah. If you know your MMA, you'll know what I'm talking about there. But yeah, 110% agree on that. I think Nico being multilingual is one of the puzzle pieces that is why he's so reserved. He is talking very deliberately. Could very well be Katie. It's a sound theory. I know he speaks 5 languages. So he's look, not to get too stereotypical, but from my experience of life, guys who can speak multiple languages tend to be very intelligent people. Like, I know everyone I know that can speak 3-4 languages fluently, like, generally are really clever people. And the way you see Rosberg talk about how meticulous he was and the tricks he picked up on how to be good in F1, fascinating stuff. Like I said, I would find an F1 interview with Nico Rosberg to be way more interesting than one with Lewis Hamilton. Cam, if we want another man on camera, I'm down. Can't really do that on OBS, I don't think, as to how I'm streaming this, Cam, but appreciate the offer. Maybe some other time I'd have to organise that at some point. I'll talk to King about that, actually, as to how to do that, if it came down to it. But, yeah. Let's have a look. haven't shouted that loud since Journey. I was the same as you. Dean was fuming because Leclerc was so close and I was too busy going crazy. Hope you're well, pal. That's really sweet of you. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate that. Hope you and Dean are going all right. Don't blame you at all. Incredible finish. Coming saying. Also feel like Hamilton has more of a career as a personality, activist, celeb, etc. after F1 than staying in the team support as a pundit, etc. No, look, I completely agree. Look, Hamilton's had his, and not to borrow an American pie term to be too cringy, like a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, in the sense of, like, I think, what's the best way of me wording this? He's had a lot of external interests for a long time. Like, him being this activist we now see more of him as in F1 is not a new thing. He talked about the environment as early as, like, 2015, 2016. And I mentioned this on the video I talked about it when talking about the Hamilton Commission, the Draybury video I made about that. He was out there doing cleanups of when he was going on holiday and bagging up other people's rubbish. And we turned it into a meme. Because we weren't prepared to listen to Hamilton. We didn't take it seriously back then with Hamilton. But I remember the pictures of him literally sitting on a pile of trash. And it was like, look, it's a meme. But what he was really doing was he was showing care for the environment. And he followed through on that by selling his private jet. He opened up a chain of vegan restaurants because he's big on being vegan and trying to lead a healthy life and trying to go meat-free, eating clean, doing his bit for the environment. He opened up the Hamilton Commission, which is obviously a fluid, diverse report on the state of diversity in careers in STEM in general, and working there, working within the sport, working within schools on a ground level, and of course, the Black Lives Matter movement. He's been at the vocal point of that, and obviously he's expanded that into talking about violence in Nigeria, talking about science in general, talking about Breonna Taylor, more and more, as Cam says, we all know why a lot of people didn't take him seriously. Yeah, because it didn't feel as important until last year that Lewis Hamilton was the only black driver in Formula 1. And that's something that we as an audience need to look at ourselves in the mirror and contemplate and reflect and talk about. And yeah, Cam's spot on. He's not dissimilar to LeBron James in that sense. Although with Hamilton, I think it's a lot more genuine with Hamilton. I think LeBron, and this is me talking as a LeBron fan, like, he was talking about his school whenever people were talking about cancelling games. I think LeBron is a lot more in it for himself, in that, like, to raise the LeBron brand. I don't think Hamilton's doing this to make himself look better so much. I think with Hamilton it comes from a much more genuine place. But he's got to break ground in an objectively way more white background than basketball. Basketball, we don't talk about it so much because 60% of the league is black. Formula 1, 99% of the sport is white. And that's something that we need to acknowledge. Lauren saying, do we think that Lewis will try and get the 8th and hang it up? The way he talked after Imola, I think he wants to keep going. I think he wants to go at least for another year. Just so I think he can see what the new cars are like and then go from there. I don't think he'll hang it up early. I think he'll have at least one more contract in him. So that's my opinion anyway. The way he was talking doesn't sound like a man that's retiring at the end of this season. you know. So yeah. Looking at the comments again real quick. Yeah, I think Lewis at this stage of his F1 career is 100% using the sport as a platform to raise awareness in his activism and other interests. Yeah, 100%. I think it will get to a point, I think maybe 5 or 10 years from now, that people will know Hamilton more for his activism, for his fashion, and for his overall influence on pop culture, even more than what he's done as an F1 driver. It's going to be a lot like Martin Brundle, where even Martin Brundle admitted about 5 or 6 years ago that, look, people come up to me and ask for autographs and pictures and selfies. People now know me more as a broadcaster more than what I did as an F1 driver. And I think Hamilton could very well end up being the same way in 10 or 15 years' time. He's one of the greatest athletes this country has ever produced, but he will always split the room for many, many complicated reasons. And I think he's legitimately mainstream as a celebrity, as a superstar in F1, and no one else is. Great question Rao asks is, do you think Lando can become as big as Hamilton in the future? No. I think Lando could be a superstar, but in a different sort of sense. I think it's a generational thing, Rao. Lando will be the Gen Z superstar because he's different to Hamilton. Not so much that, you know, Lando's not an activist or whatever. He could be. He could, for all we know, down the road, he could develop into that sort of person. Lando is different. He's a different sort of superstar. He's the modern day social media influencer sort of guy, and that's a good thing. Look, I tip my hat to Lando Norris because he gets it from an internet standpoint, at least more than most. I didn't agree with what he had to say about sprint races and how, you know, I have a bunch of dudes that aren't really F1 fans. But Lando Norris has struck gold in the sense of he's popular with people that aren't F1 fans. That sounds like a criticism. It's actually gold dust. And I say that because he will appeal to people that aren't F1 fans, and then they will start watching F1 because of him. If he gets a car that can win, look out. Seriously. Seriously. He's developing his own younger audience. He will be known more like a guy that will appeal to the Gen Z dudes that were born in 99 onwards. Guys who will be on Twitch. People that will be on YouTube. You could see where the direction of where his footprint is going. It's younger fans, and it's the Twitch generation. The streaming, the YouTuber. I mean, he's properly tapped into social media. And don't get me wrong, it's not all on him. Veloce runs Team Quadrant, so you know. He's just the face of it. But, you know. Oh, take care, Lauren. Take care. Much love. But look, seriously. Lando is going to be one of those sorts of dudes where he will tap into that influencer base. He reminds me a lot of the Sidemen. As in, guys who... You subscribe to the Sidemen, but you don't really know why. Like, what are the Sidemen known for? Just doing shit. People that subscribe to them because of who they are, not because of what they do. Lando goes semi-viral for doing dumb shit on streams. Like calling his bosses or burning toast in his toaster. And he's extended that to Team Quadrant, which is basically just their dudes fucking around doing things that have nothing to do with motorsports. And don't get me wrong, I applaud them. 2 of the guys on Team Quadrant are long-term friends of mine, and I say it on every stream I do. I am so proud of Arav. I really am. I literally used to live 10 minutes from the guy. Like, he's literally used to be down the road in Southall. Like, I am so proud of him and how he's been able to turn a pokey gig making Formula 1 videos into being one of the bigger motorsport influencers in the world. So proud of him. He's a UB1 guy, postcode-wise, through and through, and I couldn't be prouder of him. He's a great guy. What you see with Arav is what you get, and I'm so glad he got picked up by a big network that will use him to the fullest, because he's an incredibly talented guy. And people don't realise this as well. Proper engineering nut as well. Like, you don't know him for that now, because obviously he's got that more Sidemen vibe about him. But incredibly intelligent, incredibly talented, incredibly dedicated content-producing machine. Him and Niren. Obviously Steve as well. I'm not as close with Steve, but Steve used to be subscribed to this channel ages ago. He's obviously, I think, grown and moved on and doing his own thing now with karting and quadrant and, you know, sim racing in general. So I'm not quite as close with Steve, but again, I have a lot of respect for Steve. Niren, Niren is an old mucker from when he used to make F1 videos. If you're into football, you subscribe to Niren, because he's fantastic. Like, FTW is a superb show. Niren is a brilliant editor. He's a genuinely funny man. And he's a powerful influencer. He's one of the few guys that's been unafraid to talk about racial and social issues. On his platform, off his platform, on Twitter. And again, couldn't be prouder of him. And I remember him saying to me about 3 or 4 months ago that he said, "Look, I've taken a lot of my inspiration off of you, Dre," and I was touched. And this is a guy that's got 500,000 subscribers now, and is one of the best football YouTubers on the planet, doing brilliant stuff, work with Park the Bus, doing brilliant work with FNG, and doing brilliant work with Team Quadrant. And Lando will tap into that, and they will only enhance them further, and I couldn't be prouder. And, to be honest, it's nice to get a bit of diversity on the lot, Shane. Anyway, but it's not wrong. But, you know, generally speaking, they're all great dudes, and I'm glad that Lando has seen the potential in that. It's very modern, and it will only enhance his profile. Hamilton will get mainstream fame from what he does. Lando will tap in to the new breed, new media, new content, the younger set of fans that are coming through. That's where his market will be. We've not really had a guy like that in Formula 1 who's got his finger on the pulse with young people and young fans like that. Like, and as Katie points out, his popularity, he was probably the big winner to come from the coronavirus in terms of social profiles. I know Leclerc got a lot more followers, but obviously Leclerc is not as committed to streaming long term as Lando has been. But, you know, like, I don't think Lando will ever overtake Hamilton for popularity, but I think Lando will craft his own following through what he's done. And, yeah, you know, it's different, but it's also great. Vic, I'm pretty sure I don't know what exact degree it was. I think it was aeronautical engineering, Vic, and I think it was at Royal Holloway. I could be wrong. I think it's something along those lines. Could be wrong, but I think that's what it was. Then again, this was like years ago. But yeah, genuine. He originally had aspirations to get into a Formula 1 team, and it just didn't work out because he was able to make YouTube videos full time. So, yeah, safe to say it worked out alright for him in the end. Oh. Yeah, just checking my phone real quick. Oh, Santino Ferrucci is racing this weekend for RLL. Lovely. What a delightful human being he is. Yeah, nothing else too crazy in there. He makes his thumbnails in Vegas. Why does Jack Villeneuve have so many toxic opinions? Don't know, man. Just does. Look, if I'll give Jacques Villeneuve one level of respect, it's that he's committed to his opinions. He doesn't back down from them. And he's not afraid to speak his mind. I will always have a level of respect for him for that, even if I can't stand the majority of what he has to say. But look, the unfortunate reality of the sports world that we live in is that the shit hot take will always get more attention than the rational one. I've seen it on Formula 1 Twitter too many times with people that make their accounts based off hot takes and opinions on drivers left, right and centre are the ones that tend to breed the most toxicity. Just my perspective. Like, and I have to feign a level of hypocrisy to a degree on this because I've got 5,000 followers myself on Twitter, which is way more than most. And a lot of that was based on similar perspectives. But I'd like to think a lot of that was based off rationality rather than them being hot. Just my perspective. Although F1 Twitter is a fucking cesspool, and I've said it on numerous occasions. I might talk about that a bit at the end, but yeah, it's not pretty out there right now, and it's gotten worse in the last couple of years, and it's really bad now. Where the way Twitter is constructed as a site, the way that people interact with each other, and the fact that there is absolutely no room for nuance on that platform makes it worse than it is. And it's even worse when I started out there in 2011 and 2012. It was a drop in the bucket compared to what it is now. Trust me. Gibran asking, have you thought about going into sim racing? Not really, Gibran. Honestly, the honest-to-God answer is that I was never good enough. And I was not prepared to put in the time to, you know, really get up to the level that would make people want to watch me. Like, there's one obvious big shining example of that, and that's Jimmy Broadbent. I know he's not the best sim racer the world's ever seen, but he was able to combine being a really, really, really good player who's won many prolific races in the sim racing world, as well as being able to garner a fan base, garner support, and, you know, have his own following, craft his own following, and just be genuinely entertaining and funny at the same time. Like, it's an incredible skill that not many people have been able to pull off. But if you've been following me for a long time, which to be fair, I know a lot of you have, you know, people would never subscribe to me for being a good player. I was a very good MotoGP player in the early years of those games. So like Top like 13, 14, 15, the first 3 years of that series, I was genuinely like a top 200 level player in the world. But that's about the only game I was genuinely really, really good at. Like, Formula 1 wise, I was never on that level. I was never on a Noble or an X-Mat EG or a TRL Martin. Fuck the other prolific guy who has that surname, by the way, or that half of his username. You know the drill. And as Cam points out, and Cam is in the chat is a reasonably good sim racer, and he will tell you he's decent. He's very good. He would smack me around on a circuit any day of the week. And he'll be the first guy to tell you it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of commitment. And unfortunately, the way my life is, I juggle doing M101 alongside a 40 to 60 hour a week job. I would never be able to dedicate the amount of time to make it work. Like, my real life job holds me back from doing a lot of stuff that I'd really like to do. But unfortunately, it pays really well. So, because I work on sociable hours, because I'm prepared to work mornings, prepared to work evenings, prepared to work 6 days a week, you know, it makes it hard. It makes it hard to have that balanced, you know. But hey, maybe one day something cool will come along. I mean, I said it before last time I was on here. I applied to write for the Daily Express as an F1 writer. Didn't work out. But I'm okay with that, and the reason why I said it is because I'm not desperate to work in motorsport anymore. I used to be, maybe 5 years ago. Now, not so much. Because for my level of what I know I am good at it, but a lot of decent places wouldn't be able to afford what I would ask for. Let's put it to you that way. I'll give you a hint. When they said what sort of salary would I be asking for, the first digit was a 3. And that's why I will probably never end up working in motorsport, because a lot of places simply couldn't afford me compared to what I'm doing right now. And I'm not going to quit my current job for something that pays worse. That's just me being a reasonable, responsible adult. And yeah, working in the bookies is fucking hard, let me tell you. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment, a lot of dealing with difficult situations year in and year out. And a place that's open 364 days a year, and they don't pay people enough in that gig because there's too many of us. There's too many bookies on the high street. Gambling is part of the culture of this country, and they don't pay managers enough for what they do. But unfortunately, they still pay them more than most entry-level jobs into motorsport, where their salary still starts in a 1. That's the game, unfortunately. And there's not a lot of room to make money in this game unless you're a prolific YouTuber, you get your foot in the door from a really young age, maybe straight out of university, or you've been a journalist in other places for many years beforehand. Nature of the game, unfortunately. And look, I'm 29, God willing, in August. I've kind of come to peace with that at this point. And, you know, it is what it is. Do I want to work in the bookies forever? No. Would I like to work in motorsport? Yes. Would I like to compromise my livelihood in order to make that happen? No. I'm reasonable. I've got bills to pay and I've got mouths to feed back here. That's just how it is. If the dream comes along one day, then maybe, but for now, that's just how it is. User TRL Limitless has tried to silence anyone who speaks about that incident, and he hasn't apologised and acts like nothing happened. Didn't he deactivate his Twitter a couple of days ago? I did hear that I think he deactivated his Twitter. Look, I don't want to talk about it very much because, for obvious reasons, the victim I know has taken it to the police, and I don't want to potentially compromise a police investigation. All I will say is that the evidence out there paints its own story. What he did was abhorrent, disgusting, and as far as I'm concerned, he deserves no place in any motorsport-related social discourse whatsoever. And he should know better. And he is very, very lucky to still have anyone give him the time of day. It's as simple as that. And yeah, Cam says it. Cam in the chat saying good riddance. That's where I'm at. And on a personal level, I'm disappointed because he was a friend. He had reached out to me on numerous occasions. Until the evidence was described, I did have a friendship with him. And as soon as I found out the news, I blocked him on sight. I do not want to be associated with someone who is allegedly a paedophile. Again, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for the kind words, Vic. I do appreciate that. Daniel, no chance of a pick at the FE title. That series is all over the goddamn place. I admire anyone who has their life on track and knows exactly what they're doing. I'm a 21-year-old who's about to finish uni, and I have no idea what to do with the rest of my life after I finish. There is no as a guy that's got 7 years on you, if you don't mind me telling you, there is no shame in that whatsoever. If anything, we blame school because the way schools are, they are designed by proxy to get people to think about what they want to do in life from the time they're 14 years old. Whereas the actuality is, when it comes to life, is that there is no time limit on getting your shit together. But schools will make you pick what you think you want to do from the time you're 13. And that's not a healthy way of going about being a young adult. I don't know if you know this. I don't know how. I know a few people that watching me know this story, but with me, my broadcast journalism degree is in the back of my wardrobe, growing dust as we speak. It has never been relevant in anything that I've applied for or anything that I've wanted to do. I actually regret that. I don't regret it per se, because degrees were cheaper back then. But when it comes to, at least on this side of the game, from what I've learned over the last few years, it's that it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And it's all about networking and being in the right place at the right time, seeing what opportunities may land, and seeing who can get you a foot in the door. The best advice I can give you is follow your passions. Follow what you're passionate about in life, because at least that way you'll be happy. I came out of what's the best way of me wording this? I came into A-levels off my GCSEs wanting to do business studies, ICT, and maths. Anyone who's from Britain and knows what this feels like, the jump from GCSE maths to A-level maths is astronomically high. The British school system in that regard is fucked. GCSEs are a drop in the bucket compared to A-level maths. A-level maths is for dudes who want to do physics and engineering at university. It is not for the average Joe. Same for the sciences. Same for a lot of subjects. I wanted to do history, and I never got it. Because I wasn't good enough at English. Yeah, me, the guy that's a part-time motorsport journalist, was shit at English in school. Like, my English language exam was like an E at GCSE. And I don't want to be like the Jeremy Clarkson meme who points out every year that, look, I got a D and E and 2 U's at university, and I turned out great. Look, if you're going to do something, be good at it. You know, if you can be great at it, there's no reason why you can't be. And unfortunately, you never know what you fall into. You know, life is mysterious. You never know what opportunity might fall on your lap. So I'm not going to sit here and say that his way of going about things is the best, but like I decided that, you know, because I got an A grade at A-level business studies, and I had to retake 2 of those exams when I was in year 13, and I was 18 years old. Like, I had to retake it to get an A and a C. I scraped through sixth form with like 2 A-levels. Went to a not particularly great uni. University of West London, formerly Thames Valley back then. Came out of a 2-1 degree in broadcast journalism. It's not been relevant in anything that I've wanted to do in this industry. No one has ever asked me, Dre, what did you learn in your degree? No one's ever asked me about it. You know, and it makes it hard because it makes you feel like what you've done was a waste, and it's not. But I was passionate about broadcast journalism, and I was passionate about it because that's what I wanted to do, and I just did it, and it was fun. And did it apply to anything I wanted to do job-wise? It hasn't. I'm not sure it ever will. So the best advice I can ever give anybody is follow your passions, hope for the best, and network. Talk to people, get numbers, get names, get email addresses. You know, get on LinkedIn, add all your friends, add all their friends, you know, because you never know when something might drop in your lap. Like, fun fact, there was a gig to be MotoGP social media editor on LinkedIn at one point for Dorna. I didn't apply for that spot. A certain friend of mine did, and that person is now living in Barcelona, and he does the tweets for MotoGP and Moto3 races during race weekends, and that person is Lewis Sotheby, my old co-host from Bike Live. You never know what might come along. And it ended Bike Live, but I couldn't be prouder of him, because he's done so much since then, and he's living his dream, you know. And just don't let school warp your mind into thinking that what you get on the sheet of a piece of paper is the end of the story. Trust me, you'll be better off for it you'll be happier for it in the long run. And I did see your comment in there, Warwick, and I'm sorry to hear that you had to quit college 2 years in because of depression. It's awful that mental health did a number on you like that. It's mental health is not a fair hand. And look, I was very, very low on the first degree I did. It was a business degree the first time I went to university, and I quit a year and a half into that. So I know exactly how that feels. Don't beat yourself up over it is what I will tell you. Because, again, you never know what might come around. who's there saying, I'd love to follow a passion, but not gonna lie, I don't really have one at the moment other than F1, and there's no chance of getting the job in it. I'm sure it will work out for all of us. Look, man, again, you never know what might happen. Like, I think it was Kwame who said there that some people are in the same spot. Look, I'll be real with you. On a personal level, 2 years ago, I thought I was finally getting somewhere. I had a good job. I had a wonderful relationship that I was in the middle of. Best girlfriend I ever had. Was genuinely starting to think that this person might be the one. And I was about to up sticks and move to Nottingham. And start over. And just when I thought it was going along, there was, in the space of a week, a promotion that I applied for within Paddy Power to work in their head office, which now could have involved working at home thanks to this pandemic. I didn't get, and then 4 days later I was single. Because this person wanted kids, starting a family, wanted me to move in straight away, and I couldn't reasonably afford to do that. And, you know, they thought that my career was more important than my home life. And, yeah, it kicked me in the dick. It was the lowest I've ever felt as a human being. And I still have days where I think about that now, and that was nearly, the breakup was a year and a half ago. So don't think you're evil or bad or, you know, in the dumps for thinking that, you know, life will not figure itself out. I've felt that way myself. We will all go through that, I promise you. But I will also promise you that shit will get better. You may not believe it sometimes, and your brain will scream at you saying that, you know, it's better to just give up and just throw in the towel and just become monotonous. Don't. Because honestly, despite that breakup happening, 2020 from a professional standpoint was the best year of my life. I wrote a book. I was on 5 Live. I was featured by Chain Bear. You know, my follow account doubled. People gave a shit about what I had to say for the first time in my life on a mainstream level. I was on a national fucking radio station. That's the shit of dreams. Me sharing a national radio platform with Jenny Gow, Jess McFadden, and Chris Medland. That was the proudest day of my life as a broadcaster. I felt like I belonged. So don't ever give up on yourself or feel like when the walls are closing in that good shit can't happen, because it does. And damn it, it will get better. I promise you it will get better. And don't get me wrong, shit's still hard. But I think back to 2020 as a reminder as to what's possible. And I hope that one day I can get back to that point again. So yeah, don't beat yourself up when times are bad. If you're in a bad place, don't think it will last forever. Because you never know what could happen, and you will never know who could be smiling down on you and who will give you a chance. That's a promise. That went deeper than I had any intention of going, but just honest, you know. I will always try to be honest about anything that people ask me about, because I think that's the best way of going about it, you know. But that's life for you, and that's me as a 28-year-old reasonably talented black dude who happens to be in motorsport. You know, I'd rather be known for being a decent human being than anything I do with a pen or a keyboard or anything like that, you know. So if people like my work too, that's a bonus as far as I'm concerned. As cheesy as that may sound, but you know, stick at it, Warwick. Stick at it. You know, use Kwame, order you dudes. You know, I know it's a grind, and I know it's shit sometimes, and I know that, you know, it's very, very easy to be introverted and just suck it all in and just for it to be overwhelming, but yeah, you know, it does get better. I promise. I know it may sound hard to believe sometimes, but it is. I mean, this is coming from a guy who's 30 next year. I used to hate getting older, but as I've gotten a bit older, I think getting older is beautiful. Being older, being a bit wiser, seeing other people around you grow up, I think that shit's fascinating, personally. You know, and I've come to embrace it as I've gotten a bit older over the years. And that's good enough for me. Oh, okay, thanks for being your authentic you. Thank you, Katie. That's very sweet of you. Thanks, Vic. Again, very, very kind. And yeah, Cam sums it up in one sentence. There is no timeline for getting this shit together. Trust me. I still haven't got all of it figured out. But I'm 29 in August. You know. So, you know, don't... I know a lot of people admire me for that reason. Like, trust me, I haven't got this shit figured out yet either. I just take one day at a time and see what happens. That's good enough for me. Winchy, sorry I've ignored you a little bit, mate. What do you think about the driver of the day getting interviewed in the car? Cool feature. I like it. I think it was pretty neat. You know, they got Rosanna Tennant on the sticks. I know Formula E's already been doing that for quite some time, where they've had like Dario and Jack tap into the winning driver's radio and have a quick chat with them in the car. I think that's pretty neat in general. Look, man, very rarely is more accessibility a bad thing. Like, I know we want that instant gratification side of the game when it comes to sports content in general. So yeah, I'm all for it. And, you know, Vettel, having just done a 2-hour motorsport race, to still have the wit to say, hey, how did you get my number, to Rosanna Tennant, I thought was quite funny. So, yeah, British Touring, yeah, you're right, you said, BTCC does it as well. Yeah, all for it, you know. Also, shout out to them for getting some of the FIA radio messages put in with Michael Massey. We saw it during the race. We saw it during the last race as well, where we had conversations with race direction from the teams. Like, I think it was Jonathan Wheatley at Red Bull who was like, Michael, we had no idea that puncture was coming. We had no indication whatsoever that it was happening. You may want to red flag this to give people a chance to change tyres. And I think that might have been what led to the red flag during the race itself. I thought that was fascinating. I thought we got the other one from McLaren claiming that, Yuki Tsunoda didn't slow down during double-waved yellows, and then Michael Massey was like, mate, everybody doesn't slow down enough during double-waved yellows. You know, I thought that shit was great. I thought that was fascinating, and seeing that insight of how teams think is great, and big fan of that. Big fan of that. So yeah, I am all for more of that. I know fellow Dre asked, I see that you picked up your passion more with cricket in the last 2 years. Any advice for me that wants to understand the sport more? God, that's a great question. I wish I could do more with that, because cricket is not an accessible sport in the UK. And that's what's so frustrating about following it, is that 90% of it is behind Sky, so you're already paying more money, and there's not a lot of content creators out there to help people understand the game itself. Like, It's like if I wanted to start... I do watch a bit of baseball, for example. If you wanted to get into baseball right now in the UK, I would not be able to tell you where to start. And that's part of the problem. Sky used to have this brilliant little demonstration series called Willow and Stumpy. And I think it was voiced by David Gower, who's one of England's all-time great test batters. And it was just literally like 1-minute videos describing key terms about the game. And that was very, very useful towards getting new people into it. People don't do that anymore. And, like, I think a lot of people have now seen trying to get new fans into sport as beneath them, or they haven't got the effort or haven't got the resources to try and get people into it. And I think it's a shame, because how else are you going to get new viewers in if they don't understand what they're watching? I think cricket is a fantastic fucking sport. I think the strategy behind it, the intrigue behind it, the talent on display, again, the strategy side of the game, the tactical side of it, the stats side of it, I think it's fascinating. But I also admit that it is very intimidating and daunting if you're a new fan, especially if you grew up watching baseball, for example, and trying to figure out the differences. So I wish I could do more to help you out on that one. It's just frustrating because there's no real easy outlet for it. The one cricket guy that I do really enjoy watching is more of an analytics guy. So he's not going to be very useful either, because it's more for people that know and understand the game. He does do more opinion-based content on occasion from a journalistic standpoint, but his bread and butter is analytics. And the person I'm talking about is Jared Kimber. He's Australian, he lives in London now, but he's been doing fantastic cricket content on there. And from an analysis standpoint, there is no one doing what he does on YouTube. And his videos are class. Like, the content he's done on guys like Neil Wagner's bowling, like, and how he's so unique as a bowler, or how he's talked about T20 cricket from a tactical standpoint, and things like that are just tremendous. I wish he had 200,000 subscribers, because he's fucking ace. And he's only been doing this on YouTube for like less than a year. And his videos are really well edited, really well voiced, really well made, and are fantastic to watch. So if you haven't heard it already, go subscribe to him if you're a cricket fan, because Jared Kimber is superb. Genuinely brilliant at what he does. And there's no one else like him on YouTube. But just checking the chat again real quick. I think even though the McLaren message was kind of funny, I thought it was a shit take from Massey. Well, yeah, look, I can't disagree with anything you're saying there, Kai Allen. Yeah, like, Michael Massey's comment was petulant. Like, you can't just throw your hands up as a defense to a valid argument by saying, well, everyone's breaking the rules, so who cares? And look, I know he said he'll bring it up at the next drivers' meeting, that people don't slow down enough. You need to come down harder on this. Because double wave the yellows is serious business. And double wave the yellows is slow down and be prepared to stop. And everyone seems to ignore that last part with double wave the yellows. I remember at Imola last year, I think it was Lance Stroll who came barreling through the section where George Russell's car was stricken at full racing speed with people next to the track. And you're absolutely right. He was too slow in bringing out the... Look, when Verstappen crashed, that should have been an immediate safety car. Maybe even a red flag if you're talking about having a crane on track. I've said it from day one. If a crane has to be on circuit, it's an immediate red flag. Stop the fucking race. Like, we could get that car out of the way. I don't care if it takes 20 minutes to clear. Like, unless it's like 4 foot deep in a wall where a gravel trap is, there is no need for them to keep racing if there's a car on track and it needs to be removed, especially on street circuits like Baku. There should have been a red flag. Like the first time round with Lance Stroll. Like, drivers will always take liberties with that double wave yellow rule, and it's a damn shame, because it is extremely goddamn dangerous. Takes the piss. Daniel, on the topic of accessibility, what is a MotoGP concession? Basically, just take a deep breath here, because I've been talking pretty relentlessly here. The concession system in MotoGP is a set of extra rules that is designed to make a manufacturer more competitive. This was a rule book that came into place around 2014, 2015. I'll keep it brief, but long story short, 10 years ago, MotoGP was in a really bad way. 2011, there was like 17 full-time riders in MotoGP. 17. So if two guys crashed in a MotoGP race, everybody would score points. Participation was in a real shithole because Suzuki had quit and Kawasaki had quit as factory developers. So the sport was in a bad way and it needed to do something to get bikes on the grid again. So what they did was they had what they called the CRT rules. It was the claiming rules teams, which basically meant teams could buy old parts from other manufacturers for a set price. And they could build up their bikes that way by basically buying parts of older machinery. And it worked. It got more teams on the grid. Take care, Gibran. Thanks for watching, buddy. So what it did was, to raise participation, it got teams, it gave them the ability to build bikes for cheaper. And by doing that, it increased the participation. This was up until about 2016, where the sport was like, okay, fuck it, we're just going to give money to the independent teams. If you're not a factory team, here's like an extra £2 million a year. Basically, we will pay for your right to be here, and after that, you can spend more money on development afterwards, and with whatever relationship you've got with your factory teams. But we will pay for your seat, basically. So, to do that, they also split it into an open class and a factory class. The open class is what became the concession category. Now, the difference between a main MotoGP team and a concession-based team is that the concession teams can develop their engines over the course of a season. A factory team can't do that. A factory team has to homologate their engine at the start of the year, and they can't change it over the course of the season. A team on concessions can. They are allowed an extra litre of fuel in their bikes, so they can afford to run more aggressive engine settings more frequently, so that they don't have to worry about running out of fuel so much. They get more tests over the course of a year, so they get more time to help develop their bikes over time. And they also, they get more test days, more engine fuel settings. They get to develop their engine over the course of a season. Those are the main advantages of being on concessions. And by the way, if you're a factory team, you can apply for concessions if you do not score a podium finish with your factory team over the course of a calendar year. Which is why Paul Espargaro mentioned about the possibility of Repsol Honda being on concessions next year, because a Honda has not been on the podium so far this season. So, if Honda goes a whole season without a bike on the podium, they can apply for concessions, and that will help them develop their bike to catch up to the rest of the field. There is only one team in MotoGP that's on concessions right now, and that's Aprilia. And to be fair, Aprilia actually look way better this year. They actually look like they might have something that can challenge for podiums. And I think they would need 3 dry podiums over the course of the season to come off concessions. And to be fair, I think it was only about 2 or 3 years ago when Suzuki came off concessions, and last year they won the team's championship and the riders' championship with Johan Mir. So it's doable. It works. There's no doubt about that. It works. Yeah, Cam points out it's points based. I think it's something like 1 win. Like a win is worth 3, a second is worth 2, and a third is worth 1. And I think if you get to 6 points over the course of a season, you're off concessions. I think it's something like that anyway. Yeah, they're on 4 right now thanks to Alex's podiums last year. So yeah, Alex Marquez had 2 podiums for the factory team last season. So they're currently on 4 points. And I think it's 6 before you've got to come on concessions or something like that over the course of a calendar year. But yeah, it's a messy one at Honda, to say the least. We will talk about this on the show this week on Motorsport 101. I've already got 95% of the script for this week's episode already written, ready to go. And there is an entire goddamn section focused on Repsol Honda's situation. So that'll be fun to talk about, especially given that Cam is an even bigger Honda fan than I am. So that'll be interesting. So stay tuned for that one later on this week. John T, good to see you, buddy. Glad you could join us. I know it's a bit late, but you know, that's fun. Just gonna message Katie because she just tweeted me saying I gotta go to bed and all that. Thanks, Katie. Much appreciated, darling. But yeah. Oh, I hope that was a good explanation, Daniel. I had to try and basically condense like 10 years of the sport getting to this point in terms of rule changes to where it actually somewhat works. Because now MotoGP is as competitive as it's ever been. Amazing. When Honda has the worst bike in the field, it says a lot about the state of play. Like, Aprilia has a better bike than they do at the moment. No joke. Like, Yamaha and Ducati are the clear top 2. KTM has come surging through in the last couple of years. Not a couple of years, but also just a couple of races. Miguel Oliveira going 2nd and 1st in his last 2 rounds. He's been fantastic in the last couple of races. KTM coming back into play. Suzuki are the reigning team's champions. They're not quite there this year, and Mir was mad as hell in Catalonia because he was put on the wrong rear tyre. But again, Suzuki are very, very good in race trim. Can win any given race on paper if they get a good enough start. The odd one out is Honda right now. Marquez's shoulder is looking better by the week. He did 73 laps in the test today. But the bike is a donkey. He did not finish in Catalonia. Paul Espargaro didn't finish in Catalonia. Taka Nakagami couldn't help but break track limits and had to do 2 long lap penalties. And Alex Marquez has crashed, I think, in 3 rounds this year already. It is a hot goddamn mess, to say the least. So, amazingly, Honda right now is probably the worst of a bad bunch. There is a man in the field, i.e. Frankie Morbidelli, who is doing better than them on a 2-year-old Yamaha. Yeah. So yeah, it is a mess. But yeah, stay tuned. Episode 308 of Motorsport 101, which we are recording later this week, will be out, and we talk all about that. It's a loaded show, actually. There's a lot in there on Baku. There's a lot about MotoGP, and there's even an optional Moto3 section in there as well, because their race was heart attack inducing, I think is the word I would best describe it as, to say the least. So there's a lot to get through, so stick around for that as well. That'll be later in the week. Different type of question. Andre says, "Do you drive? And if you're not, will you ever get a license?" I don't drive. My shop where I work is a 15-minute walk from where I live. There is no point in me learning how to drive. It's expensive, and for me, I live in London, it's not necessary. Our public transport is genuinely very good. So I don't really feel like there's a great big need for for me to have a driver's license and pay all the money for lessons. If I ever move out of London, I most definitely will learn how to drive, because the countryside is far more expansive and far more necessary. You need a car. In those areas, you need a car. In London, you don't need one. In fact, you can actually see back here. That's my brand new electric scooter. I actually got that specifically for work. Because getting a bus back and forth from where I work to my shop is like £3 a day. The electric scooter cost me 500 quid. Like, I will make that money back in recouped oyster fees over the next 6 months or so. I'll make the money back on that in 6 or 7 months' time. And for anyone who asks, why don't you just walk home? I don't finish most of my shifts until 10 PM at night. I am not comfortable walking back home at London at night. I've been physically attacked outside my shop once, and I've been threatened on 3 separate occasions. Nature of working in the bookies, it is genuinely dangerous for me to be walking home by myself. So with a scooter, I know I can get on it and I can get home in 5 or 6 minutes. It's genuinely safer for me to do that, rather than spending literally thousands of pounds on lessons, a car, and then insuring a inexperienced 28-year-old. It just doesn't make any sense. What I might do, if I ever get a windfall, or if I get a big amount of money from somewhere, or if I save up enough, what I might consider doing is I might do the lessons and get a license just to have the option. Well, if I could drive a car at some point, I would, but I don't really need to. That's something I might consider in a year or so's time, but right now I just don't need it. There is no real reason to do so. At least in my opinion, anyway. Work was always walkable. Yeah, makes sense. They should do that for engine manufacturers, something like testing time and freezing the design. Look, Daniel, I completely agree that F1... F1 to a degree kinda did with development tokens, specifically for Honda, because they were late to the hybrid era and they had to catch up. Worked out in the end. If anything, the cost cap might balance the books down the road. Like, not only that, but like having restrictions on wind tunnels, for example, will definitely help balance the books down the road. It's going to be a while, I think, before we see the true effects of that, but it's coming, basically. And I think it could have a good, positive effect 4 or 5 years down the line. That could certainly help. I now have images of chavs trying to chase you on the scooter like a crap Wile E. Coyote. I can imagine that too. But yeah, full speed. Whatchamacallit? That scooter can go at 15 miles an hour. It ain't slow. It is not a slow boy at all. So it is certainly capable of outrunning. You'd have to be at full sprint speed to outdo an electric scooter, and you'd have to be pretty fast at that point as well. A sec. Then for next year, second attempt at my driving test in August. For my first attempt, my examiner was one of the worst people I've met. Nothing like a bad teacher. It's the worst. Completely agree. I still have like 30 of you in here. This is wild, man. Like, that's crazy. Again, I'll go for another 10 minutes because it's been nearly 3 hours. I didn't think I was only going to go 2 hours, to be honest. But it's actually been, again, I've enjoyed it enough where I kind of don't mind doing a third. But with 2:35 in, 2:40 in. So we'll go another 10 minutes. So if you want to get some rapid fire questions in, knock yourself out. Am I going to do London? Am I going to do the London E-Prix? Probably. I'm considering going maybe via media accreditation. So I might go there as a journo, representing M101. So I might be in the press box rather than in the stands. Again, we don't know what the fan situation will be like for Formula E by the time it gets to London. I'm going to assume the way things have gone, they'll have a capacity crowd, 5 figures, most likely. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. If I don't go as a member of the media, I will certainly go as a fan if I can, is what I would say. Again, I'll keep you posted on that. I've got to talk to Hazel about that and see if that's doable, because I know King has done it before for M101 in New York. So, yeah, certainly a possibility of that. So, yeah, we'll see how we go. John T, do you believe it was debris? Yes, probably. Pirelli's initial statement also said that it had found a cut on Hamilton's tyre, which makes me think there was some sort of jagged edge on track that may or may not have caused it, especially given that both incidents were in very similar spots as well. So, look, I have no reason to disbelieve Pirelli. I think the people, like, the thing is, I feel bad for Pirelli to a degree, because they are always in a tug of war between people they want to please, whether it be the fans, the teams, or the FIA. They are a loveless, thankless job, and, you know, they are always fighting for someone's affections one way or another. So, I don't know, is the short answer. I think Pirelli have the right to be able to conduct a judgment-free investigation and see what comes up. But what I will say is, certainly having two big blowouts at 200 miles an hour from the exact same tyre on almost the exact same part of the track, like, it's not a good look at all. So, yeah, like I said, it's not ideal, but Pirelli have the right to reply, and I'll go from there, basically, and see what reasoning they come out with. I think a lot of people just immediately don't believe them because they don't like Pirelli. Like, Pirelli wrote their statement, and the first fucking reply in there was Matt goddamn Gallagher saying, "Oh, you could just admit it was a tyre failure," and I'm just like, you're not helping. You're not helping, but here we are, you know? Influencers. What can you do? What do you think of the Miami track layout? I think it's fine. Look, I don't think there's ever going to be a layout that will please everybody. I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything particularly egregious about it. I think it's fine. Again, I don't like to get too sucked into thoughts on track layouts, because I also think that the cars are largely the issue and not the track layouts themselves necessarily. So we'll have to wait and see. Wait and see how it races. But I think it's fine. But I don't think there's anything particularly bad about it. So yeah, I'm fine with it for the most part, Gabriel. Andre saying, I presume you asked this, but are your hours of work non-negotiable? Yes and no. I'm manager of my shop, so I have to do the rota for that week. I'm understaffed. My shop is understaffed, and as a result, I end up doing a lot of overtime. I don't mind it so much because it's easy. It's an easy job for me at times. It's a quiet shop. And it's quite easy to sit there and watch sports and get paid for it. It's not a bad job when you're good at what you're doing, but it also takes away a lot of your livelihood. If you're doing a morning shift, you're getting up at 6:30 in the morning, and you're getting in for 5 most of the time. If you're working at 1 PM in the afternoon, you're in till 10. So you're getting in from work at 10:30 at night, and by that point you don't really want to do anything. You just want to go home and rest and eat dinner. So, I have to be very meticulous in how I do rotas. But the last 2 or 3 months I've been understaffed, and I've had to do about 50 hours a week on average. It's not healthy, I don't recommend it, but I've not had much of a choice. My job is not a very sociable one at all. It's a lonely job. It's a high-risk job. We are not paid enough for the risks that involved in what we do. But it is what it is. That's the hopes, anyway.
Red flag, Nick, red flag. At the end of this lap, there will be 3 laps remaining. So right now it's P1 is Perez, P2 Hamilton, P3 Vettel, P4 Gasly, 5th is Leclerc. Okay, make the job, Susan.
Yeah, where was Sebastian again?
P2. Really good run. Perez won the race.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Sorry, I just saw a video of Mick Schumacher checking in and asking where Seb finished. It's so cute. Can't help it. Hey Dre, question. Since you went back to work, have you noticed any changes with your shop and the people coming in? Yes and no, Kelly. It's weird because when we first reopened, we were under tighter restrictions, so it was a very different experience. We couldn't play live sports, and that included the racing. You only had the audio. People could only be in the shop for 15 minutes at a time, and we were only allowed to have 8 people in the shop at any one point. That's when it was really quiet and really headache inducing. That we mentally it was so draining because it was so fucking boring. I was taking 50 bets in a 14-hour day, and I was sitting around doing nothing. And the guys who were coming in to play the machines had to leave 15 minutes later, and then they were only allowed in twice for the day. So it was a lot of dead space and a lot of dead time. Now the only real difference is the dividers between machines, obviously to keep people distanced as best we can. Like, the pubs are back open now in the UK, and a lot of people who gamble also drink. Because gambling is a very social experience. A lot of people like to sit down, take a racing post, go outside, smoke a cigarette. It's part of the overall social experience as that comes with the job. So when the pubs were closed, we were dead. When the pubs reopened, the same faces started coming back in. So now it's pretty much back to what it was. So Dre's like, I do like now almost all shops have hand sanitizers. I hope that's here to stay. Completely agree. Like, if there's one thing this pandemic taught us, or taught me at least, is that we didn't take health seriously enough. We should be washing our hands everywhere. We should be sanitizing our hands everywhere. We should be more responsive when it comes to health. We probably, if you've got a cold or if you've got the flu, you probably should wear a mask. Like, I'm glad to an extent that's been normalised, because if I'm being honest, in this country, we were very judgmental, I think, towards people of, like, East Asian descent who, you know, who were wearing masks if they were ill or just being generally careful about dirty air. Like, in general, I'm glad that's been normalised, and I hope that part of what's happened with COVID stays. Because being more health conscious is objectively a good thing, you know, and I hope that continues long after this pandemic hopefully finishes, whenever it may be. And if you're 25 to 29 in the UK, tomorrow you can get your vaccine. So if you're in the UK and you're in my age group, 25 to 29, get that shit booked tomorrow, please. Okay, thank you. Daniel, that social experience is really screwed up. Look, I agree. Like, this will be my last question before I get out of here. Hi, Sportology. Sorry you came in so late. You timed that one pretty badly. But no, what I was going to say is that, look, my job is not, my job is an ugly one. Every commercial you see that talks about gambling will talk up the sexy side of it, the prospect of making money, you know, the drama of the thrill of chasing that money and what comes with that will always be hyped up. No one talks about the darker side of gambling. And in this country, like, fuck. No worries, Andrew. Good to see you, man. Yeah, you were unlucky, Sportology. I started at 8 PM UK time. It's nearly 11 o'clock now, so I've been going for nearly 3 hours. But no, what I was going to say is that, look, no one talks about the darker side of the game. And in the UK, at least, drinking has become normalised. Being addicted to alcohol is a normal part of society now. Even where I work in West London, you're never more than 100 yards away from a set of street drinkers. Drugs have largely become normalised. Very normal part of the game. When I was in Shepherd's Bush, I was semi-regularly removing sharps. I had a sharps bin in my shop purely for needles. My first Grand National, I worked in Shepherd's Bush. There was a guy who smoked heroin in my toilets. That's the part of the job they don't tell you. Because a lot of those vices and addictions go hand in hand with gambling. And I'd argue it makes gambling even worse. Look, my shop is 3 doors down from a pub and it's 100 yards away from another pub across the road. Trust me, 50% of the bets I take in a day are not from people who are sober. That's just a fact. I know guys that will come in and out of my shop 10 times a day because they've gone from the pub, they play the horse racing inside the pub, and then they'll come into my shop, gamble, and then go back to the pub again to watch the race. Back and forth. 10 times a day. Easy. Easily. These gambling firms do not give a shit about responsible gambling. They spend 1/1000th of the money they make. Like, for every £1,000 they take, they might spend £1 on responsible gambling, on Gam Care, on all these other gambling firms. And if you ask anyone else in the industry, they'll tell you the exact same thing. Like, they do it, they only do it because if they didn't do it, the government would regulate them even more tightly. It's to give off the illusion that they care about their customers when they don't. They put these measures in place like self-exclusions and gamble and, you know, like cool-off periods. They put them in there to make it look like they care, but they only do it because the government would force them to if they didn't. It's as simple as that. I tell people I don't sell a product. We're classed as retailers, which I think is hilarious because we don't sell a product. We sell a service. We sell the right for you to lose money. Like, I tell people behind the counter, I sell people a dream. I sell them a price. And look, they sign my checks, so I will always err a level of hypocrisy. But I'm not going to sit here and beat around the bush and tell you that these companies are wonderful. The people you work with on the ground floor are great people. Bookies managers are like a band of brothers. We all support each other when we can because we all know it's shit to a degree. And if we can make somebody else's life a little bit easier, we'll do it. Because we can. But the higher-ups, fuck them. They're all just in it to make money. These are big old corporations. These bookies make billions of pounds a year. It's just in this country, it's more socially acceptable because gambling is a part of the British culture. The Grand National, betting on horse racing, is hugely popular. It's still the #1 market we take bets on. Over 50% of all gambling bets are on horse racing. It's part of the country's culture. Compared to other places like America, where gambling's only really just been legalized outside of Vegas, like, it's not really a thing in other countries. You know? So, in the UK, it's been part of the culture for 70 years. In fact, the guy that started William Hill, the William Hill, thought that having licensed betting offices would never catch on. True story. He had one office in London, but he thought the idea of licensed betting offices would never catch on. And to be fair, in the UK that bubble has burst. The regulations the government has put in on things like gambling machines going down from £100 a spin to £2 a spin. A lot of bookies are closing. A lot of them are desperate to move their businesses online because online money is the future. The brick and mortar game is dying with gambling. And yeah, those who are higher up the ladder only see dollar signs and money. The best people I've worked with in the gambling industry are the ones who worked behind the counter. Those are the guys who get it. Those are the guys who understand what it's like, how the business works, and how to connect with people. The guys that are the higher ups, they're all just in it for profit. It's shit. and I'm not denying that it's not shit. But, Jonty saying, yeah, second to last place I worked, the boss was very friendly, and with the guy who owns Bet365, I learned very quickly what his ideals are. Yeah. Bet365 were handing out dividends and bonuses like cotton candy during this pandemic. They made billions. I think the woman who now is their CEO, I think gave herself the biggest dividend bonus, I think, in British history earlier this year. I think it was something like £95 million. That's how much money the Bet365 makes. How do you think they can afford having Ray Winston during their commercials? They got good money. And trust me, no industry spends more money on marketing than gambling firms do. As Uzair points out, tobacco sponsorship has died because it's now socially acceptable to hector smokers. Like, smoking is now... It's now socially acceptable to condemn smoking and to cuss people out that smoke cigarettes. Like, they've been replaced with, vaping and e-cigarettes now. But the advertising in that game is dead. They've all now moved on to gambling, because gambling firms are willing to spend millions and millions of pounds on tying their name down on everything. Half the Premier League has a stadium or a shirt sponsor backed by a bookies. William Hill was betting partner to Everton, Tottenham and Chelsea at one point. We got special coupons for them when I used to work for them. They were taking bets at the stadium a couple of years ago. Like, this was a serious thing. I used to work in Shepherd's Bush, and I would get bets from QPR Stadium because Loftus Road was 10 minutes from where I worked. So every match day I would get 7 or 8 bets directly from the stadium, and I had to call them up saying, yeah, this is the stadium bet, how much is it on it, pay it out, etc, etc. Like, gambling has wormed its way into sport, and I think it's only in the last 3 or 4 years that people in this country really noticed that, it's a lot of dirty gambling money. Yeah, Bet365 Stadium, that's Stoke City, I think, isn't it? Leicester's biggest shirt sponsor, King Power, another bookies. Every darts tournament, every snooker tournament is backed by a bookies. So I think like half the Premier League and half of English football is now backed by a bookies of some kind. And like I said, every darts tournament, every snooker tournament you can think of has a bookie sponsor in it. Like, it's the Betfair, etc, etc. It's the Ladbrokes Grand Slam of darts, etc. The bookies are all over it. Darts has gone one further. Darts on Sky Sports, they have the betting odds before the games even starts. It's fucking crazy. Me and my mate did 19 hours over a bank holiday weekend to make the lectins for the Stanley Matthews Memorials. The boss got 15 grand in a Singapore holiday. We got, alright, cheers. Yeah, there's a lot of money these guys are willing to throw away. Andre, you could really talk about young kids buying loot boxes as the start of Yeah. Dre, you're spot on. You're absolutely spot on. That is the dirtiest side of this game. EA will never admit it, but what they're doing with Ultimate Team is gambling. If you're spending money on a product that you don't know what you'll get in return, with a chance of something great but a chance of not making the return on your investment, it's gambling. Anyone who disagrees can go fuck themselves. They called it a friggin' surprise mechanic. And the thing that's awful about it is that they're using that term because a lot of older people don't understand video games. A lot of people that are, in their 40s or 50s didn't grow up playing video games. They don't get them, so they will use these vague, blurred language to blur the lines between conventional gambling that you know when you're in a casino to what you're doing if you're going out on a games console playing FIFA, Madden, or whatever game with microtransactions that has loot box mechanics in them and not knowing what you're going to get. Yeah, well done Belgium for being the first major country to realise this is a fucking problem, because you cannot buy FIFA points in Belgium, which is the premium currency for buying packs on FIFA where you don't know what you get. And trust me, anyone who plays FIFA knows that packs are never fucking worth it. What Ultimate Team cards are basically what NFTs have become now. Congrats, you own something with no tangible real life benefit. It's gambling, and it needs to be banned in the UK. I know the House of Lords are looking into it right now. I think them and the Gambling Commission are conducting their own investigation into all of it. But I know Belgium banned it outright a couple of years ago, and I fucking applaud them for it, that they stood up to EA and won. Because it is disgusting. Like, I've seen so many horror stories of kids picking up their parents' debit cards and running up thousands of pounds worth of bills. I have spoken to people in my bookies who get addicted to playing FIFA. And have spent... I don't know if anyone knows Manny on YouTube, FIFA Manny, who does the FIFA videos on it. He openly admitted he spent 30 grand on FIFA 20's Ultimate Team last year. On a £50 game. He spent £30,000 on FIFA to make content on YouTube. Now don't get me wrong, he'll make his money back because of YouTube ad revenue. But that is a terrifying amount of money to spend on a video game. 30 grand! That's more than I make in a year. That's more than a year's pay for most people. On pixels. It's terrifying. And the one that got me was the EA released their financial report for the year last month. Do you know how much money they made on microtransactions? It was $1.8 billion. I think it was 29% of their total income last year came from microtransactions. The most as a percentage ever for EA. 30% of your revenue came from microtransactions. It's terrifying. Like, gambling and gambling addiction is not an old man's game. I know it looks like it with horse racing and greyhound racing and football being, the association of being in the bookies is an old man game. The young man's version of that is playing FIFA and playing AAA games that have exploitative gambling mechanics factored into them. It's disgraceful. And the fact that the games industry is so inherently toxic. Again, if you have not subscribed to Jim Sterling on YouTube, I highly recommend you do. They have done a tremendous job highlighting all the flaws in the video game industry and talks extensively about microtransactions, gambling mechanics, crunch with games developers. Simon Minaj did a very good segment on this as well on his show Patriot Act, which is also on YouTube, another fantastic show. Again, highly recommend Patriot Act as well, with Simon Minaj. Just great show. They've talked about it as well, but Jim at the Jimquisition, they've done a tremendous job in talking about the industry and the toxic side of it. Thank God for them. Quite right, Cam. Tremendous content, and yeah, if you want to hear about it in more detail, then you can. God, I went deeper than I thought on that one again, because like I've gone past 11 o'clock now UK time, and there's still 24 of you in here. Oh my God, I've done over 3 hours. I'm exhausted. I've got a half pint of Häagen-Dazs vanilla waiting for me downstairs, so I'm gonna get out of here. I didn't want to leave on a bit of a somber note, but I'd like to think I'm quite a versatile talker. Don't let the podcast fool you. I know a little bit about a lot of shit. And I like to be educated on these things, so you know it's fun. But this was very, very fun. Yeah, Daniel, I'm starving. Trust me, I've not eaten since like 6. So I'm gonna go do that now. But if you haven't already, leave a like. I'd be very grateful. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks to over 270 views. Average watch time according to analytics 20 minutes. The average person has been here for 20 minutes watching. That's fucking fantastic. So thank you all very much for watching. I always say this, but I promise I will try and do more of these in the future, because you guys seem to really enjoy them whenever I do them. And thank you all for tuning in. There'll be another M101 up later this week. Big loaded show coming up, talking about Formula 1 in Baku. A lot to break down there. A lot on MotoGP in Catalonia as well. A lot to talk about there. So it's going to be a very fun episode if you haven't already. Also, check out patreon.com/motorsport101. If you want to back the show financially, you can. The next 2 episodes will also be available to everybody early for just $1. So if you want to back us on Patreon, there's been no better time. Literally, a cup of coffee will get you a bunch of content early. So you know that's pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Again, if you don't normally follow me on social media, you can personally. I am on Twitter at Harrison101HD. You can follow me on there. You can follow me on Instagram as well, Harrison101. You can find me on there. If you want to find the podcast, which I'm a host of, the Motorsport 101 podcast, that's at Motorsport_101. Cam's on it in the chat already. You can follow Cam at cbuckley917. He's a good dude. A fine co-host, my partner in crime, on Motorsport 101 as well. All of that good stuff. So if you've been watching and you hit me up on social media, come say hi, and thank you for watching. It's been fantastic. It's been great fun, as always. I'm now going to go get some ice cream, but thank you all so much for watching. Have a lovely rest of your evenings, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Good night, everybody.